Hardy was sitting in the office of an old friend, feeling nervous as he waited for his appointment. Rabbi William Goldberg had retired and started a counseling practice, helping people with marriage and relationship issues. His past work with veterans had been rewarding, but it took a toll on him. After serving in the military as a young man and spending 25 years in the reserves, he retired with pride and full benefits. He believed that God guided him to this new path, and he didn't want to let anyone down. Originally from New York, he had lived in the South for a while and surprised his friends by moving to Montgomery, Alabama. He loved the area because it was near the coast, but far enough away to avoid most hurricanes, and the mild winters were good for his arthritis. He was somewhat surprised by the number of Jewish people living there, but a friend informed him they had been there since the late 1800s. It took a while for him to get used to the phrase, "Shalom, y'all." Hardy Wilkes was one of his most memorable patients. Always cheerful, he seemed different from what his file described. As Rabbi Bill got to know him better, he realized that Hardy had a tough childhood and lacked good role models. This troubled past sometimes made it hard for him to make good choices. Rabbi Bill, as Hardy called him, spent almost a year helping him. During physical therapy for his injuries, they also had sessions together. Bill even taught him to play the organ, which helped Hardy focus and relieve stress. It was impressive how quickly he learned, pouring his heart into the music. They would often play for a few minutes before their talks began. Bill was surprised by Hardy's job and his marriage. Once he never imagined Hardy would become a lawyer, wear nice suits, or marry a beautiful woman who was the daughter of a wealthy owner of his law firm. But it wasn't shocking that he might be having problems in his marriage. Bill was ready for an interesting session. After they shook hands, they hugged. Bill looked at Hardy, noticing his longer hair and beard. It was a different look from when he last remembered him with his short military haircut. He seemed a bit wild. "So, Rabbi, enjoying the sunny South?" Hardy joked. "Yeah, Hardy, I'm addicted to grits now. Good luck finding that in a New York kosher deli. Believe it or not, there's a great bagel shop just around the corner. It feels a bit like heaven here," Bill replied. They chatted about friends and old times, then Bill leaned back in his comfortable recliner. He liked this chair much more than a desk. "So, this isn't just a friendly visit. How did you find me?" Bill asked. "Major Stein told me about you. Just so you know, I see him twice a month for 3-hour sessions, and yes, it relates to this," Hardy admitted. Bill made a mental note to call Major Stein later. He knew Stein was still in the military, and there was something else going on. "Hardy, I'm happy to help you, but why me? It's a long drive, and I'm sure there are good counselors in Birmingham," he said. "2 reasons. I know you well, and the drive will probably frustrate my wife," Hardy responded. "Hardy, I need to say this up front. If you're just trying to annoy your wife, please don't involve me. I don't need that trouble. Why don't you tell me what you really want and what made you seek counseling?" Bill said firmly. For the next 2 hours, Hardy shared everything he could think of. He talked about his time in Paris, what's been happening at home, and how he felt. Bill tried to hide his shock as he listened. Hardy explained how he resisted his wife's advances at first, their courtship, and how they had started arguing more, leaving him feeling disrespected. Even without the cheating, things were falling apart. She made promises I started to see she wouldn't keep. The cheating broke my trust completely, and I refused to keep checking on her. "A clean break seems best," Hardy said. "Do you still love her?" Bill asked. "I'm so tired of everyone asking me that." "Yes, I guess I still do, but I hope I'll get over it with time," Hardy replied. "So you don't think you can work things out? Why are you here then?" Bill inquired. "It's court-ordered, I can't skip it. I'm hoping you'll see it's hopeless and let me stop early," Hardy explained. Bill leaned back in his chair. He loved that chair. "From what you've told me, I'm not sure I want to see you again. It sounds like it could get messy, but just to be fair, give me your wife's number. I'll arrange an individual session with her at least 2 hours. After that, we'll see how it goes. By the way, this session won't count towards your required visits. Take it or leave it, Hardy. Just remember you came to me," Bill said. Hardy argued a bit, but in the end he accepted the conditions. Meanwhile, Gwen was stuck in rush-hour traffic on I-65, frustrated as the speed limit was 70, but she was crawling along at 25. She couldn't help but smile, thinking about how Hardy had tricked her into seeing the counselor. J.T. Bill was a bit annoyed too, but he remembered that they agreed he could choose, and no one mentioned where. He hung up the phone with a smile. Mrs. Wilkes had called 3 times, which was a good sign. It looked like one of the partners was serious about getting help. She arrived 20 minutes late, saying sorry as she walked in. The short man with a beard and cap didn't match her idea of a counselor. Sorry, traffic was terrible. I'll plan better next time. Relax, Mrs. Wilkes. You're too tense to think straight. Let's do some breathing exercises to help you calm down. Please close your eyes. For the next 5 minutes, she listened to his soft voice and breathed in and out like he said to do. When they finished, she felt much calmer. Thanks, doctor. Wait, what should I call you? Doctor? Rabbi? Counselor? You can just call me Bill. I'm not a doctor, just a licensed therapist. Would you like me to call you Mrs. Wilkes or Gwen? Oh, it feels nice to hear Mrs. Wilkes after so long, but I think Gwen would make me feel more at ease. Great. So, Gwen, what do you want from me? His question shocked her. I want you to help me get my husband back. Why? Why what? Why do you want him back? Because I love him. I miss him. I need him. I'm sorry for being blunt, but your husband says you cheated on him and didn't treat him nicely. If that's true, then it sounds like you don't actually need him. It seems more like he was just comfortable for you. That's not true. I did neglect him. I got caught up in a big project for work and it took my focus for a while. So, you're saying once the project was done, you planned to be a caring wife again. What if another big project came up? Would you have pushed him aside again until you were finished? Did you really plan to start the family you promised him? You're making me sound terrible. I was going to move into a new part of the firm, court litigation. I would have had more time at home and we could have worked on our marriage. But didn't your boss, who is your father, kind of push you into that, making Hardy leave for a time? He told me you got angry, saying he and your father teamed up to change what you did at work, forcing you to stay home. Then when he came back, he found you in bed with another man. I've explained that. I was almost taken advantage of. I find your choice of words interesting. Were you more taken or less taken advantage of? I was drugged. He used that to his benefit. Honestly, I see now that I put myself in that position for it to happen, but it was still non-consensual. Even while I was drugged, I tried to get him to stop. Why didn't you report it? Remember, I'm a lawyer. It wouldn't have worked. I had previous relations with him under almost the same conditions, willingly taking drugs. I doubt I would have won, and I didn't want my family to go through that pain. Just saying I used drugs would have ruined my career and embarrassed my family. It would just show the world what kind of person I was. Tell me, Gwen, what kind of person are you? How were you before this happened, and are you different now? She stayed quiet for a few minutes, gathering her thoughts. Before, I wasn't really an adult. I was just a spoiled rich girl pretending to be strong. My mother cheated a lot, and my father finally divorced her. I spent about a year with her before I went back to my father, who wasn't really a good role model. He was just so happy to have me back that he gave me whatever I wanted. I got used to saying I want and getting it without understanding how the real world works. Hardy tried hard to teach me, and so did my dad. In fact, my dad begged me not to marry Hardy, not because he disliked him, but because he secretly didn't think much of me. Were you happy with Hardy? Tell the truth. She frowned, deep in thought. Yes, mostly. I was very happy. Of course, there were things I wanted to change. What spouse doesn't? But when he looked at me with those warm gray eyes and that goofy smile, telling me he loved me in that sweet voice of his, I would melt. I knew he loved me completely. When did you start pulling away from him? Who said I pulled away? He did. He said he wondered why you didn't think you were good enough for him anymore, why you seemed embarrassed by him at times. Is there any truth to that? She lowered her head. Looking back, I have to admit there were times when I wished he was a little more polished, less country-like. He didn't care much for the people I hung out with, thinking they were fake and boring. Sadly, I now think he was right. I didn't like his friends either, like the police officers and the boys from the neighborhood and people from his gym. And I couldn't stand his paralegal. She still tries to win him over. Their world scared me, but at least it was real. I realized later that his southern charm, while genuine, was sometimes exaggerated to get what he wanted. He would adjust it based on the situation, and that's part of why he was so good at his job. People would watch him and think because he talked slowly, he was slow. Next thing they knew, they would find themselves on the ground, stunned, as he drove away with a rebel flag on his truck saying, "Honk if you love Dixie." So, you're proud of him then? Yes, very much. He takes on tough cases that no one else will take, and he does it for free, thanks to my dad. He did everything he could to help that person get justice. He was careful, only taking cases where he believed the person was innocent. Sometimes he would take a case where the person's guilt was clear, but he thought the punishment was too harsh. He was very successful at his job. Have you told him that you are proud of him? Not really. His cases were sad, and I found them too heavy to talk about. Bill glanced at the clock. Mrs. Wilkes, we have about 40 minutes left. I'm happy to stay a bit longer if you want. Let's make some coffee and take a short break. They stood to stretch and start the coffee. Bill had brought some bagels with different toppings. Gwen hadn't eaten since lunch and had been too nervous to eat much then. The bagel was really good. They teased each other, saying that since they were in the South, he should have brought a platter of biscuits. When they sat back down, Bill asked if he could go over what they had talked about so far, just to be sure he didn't miss anything. She nodded. Okay, so far we've talked about how you used to be a spoiled child who didn't understand how the real world worked. You got what you wanted without effort or taking responsibility. Now who are you now? Have you changed, and why? Gwen took a deep breath. For better or worse, I'm not the same person I was. I'm not a girl anymore. I'm a woman now. I hated my dad for bringing me here and cutting off my money. I hated it for the first few months. I even cried myself to sleep a few times. I spent my money and barely had enough left for food or gas. But then I started to learn. I made a budget and stuck to it. I've always wanted to succeed, and I think that comes from my dad, so I put all my effort into my job. It was very different from dealing with people wearing expensive suits and drinking nice wine in fancy restaurants to working with people in a small, dirty room. I learned to tell the difference between liars and kids who were very scared. I put away drug dealers, thieves, and other criminals, knowing they would not like me for what I did. But I did it anyway because it was better for everyone without them on the streets. I got really good at my job and earned a reputation for being tough but fair. The biggest reason I changed was meeting my family. I was the only child of an only child, so I didn't have any family ties except with my father. My mom had a sister, but I haven't seen her since I was 8. At first, it was my husband's relatives, his grandfather Joshua Hardy, and so many Wilkes. It felt like a small country. I had dinner with them almost every other week, and they accepted me. Some might have been upset about what I did to my husband, but they mostly kept those feelings to themselves. It was one of the best feelings I've ever had. These people weren't trying to climb the social ladder, they just accepted me as family and treated me like one. Suddenly I was Aunt Gwen, getting attention from the younger ones and kindness, or even love, from the older ones. Then I met my great-aunt. Did I mention my grandmother was from Birmingham? That brought in a whole new set of cousins. I'm related to most people in 4 counties, including the black community. That's a story for another time. The important thing is I came here as a stranger and became part of a family. I didn't tell my dad, but no matter what happens between Hardy and me, I'm never going back to Boston. I feel at home here. She paused for a moment, emotional. Bill understood. Since being here, people often asked if he was related to someone. At first, he felt annoyed, thinking they assumed all Jews were connected. But after some time, he realized that no matter your race or beliefs, finding family ties was as normal as talking about the weather. The important thing is, I've grown up. I am ready to take responsibility for my actions. What a foolish girl did is not what a sad, grown woman would do. I know I might never get him back, Bill, but I want to show him that if he decides to come back, he will find a changed woman, not the foolish girl he once knew. I want him to know I don't want our old marriage back, but a new and stronger one. Please help him to understand that. And no matter what happens, I will always love him. Bill was impressed enough to take them on as clients. He decided to meet with each of them one more time before they met together. His last comment was, "Tell Hardy not to miss any sessions, and yes, I'll ensure the individual sessions are included in the agreement." Rabbi Bill called Major Stein to talk about a man named Hardy Wilkes. They agreed that Hardy was still working on himself and needed to be monitored closely. Major Stein thought for a moment. He made a decision and picked up the phone. Hardy had canceled his next session, saying he would be out of the country. Maybe it was time to speak with someone else. He had mentioned talking to the wife. Hardy was hesitant, but agreed if it was necessary. Mrs. Wilkes? Good morning. I'm Ben Stein, also known as Major Stein. I don't know if you know, but I'm working with Hardy as part of his follow-up for his military past through the local VA. I would like to meet with you, and I assure you that Hardy agrees. He can't go to his appointment this week, and I was wondering if you could go instead. You will? Great. Let me give you the address. You can find it on Google. It's on Friday afternoon if that works for you. Thank you. Gwen took the day off because she didn't have much work to do with the Escobar trial going on. She even had some vacation days left. She told Paul she had to go out of town quickly. He let her leave without question. Maybe she will go somewhere and relax, he thought. That will probably be good for her. She felt thankful to her dad for putting $10,000 in her bank account. She had shared with him her plans for counseling and her visit to Major Stein. When he learned she was going to drive 7 hours to Fort Stewart, he insisted she fly instead, not wanting her to make that long trip by herself. Daddy, I can't pay for the plane ticket, the rental car, or a hotel. You can now. I'll put the money in your account. Think of it as a gift from a worried dad. If you had let me give you the money from your trust fund, we wouldn't be having this talk. I told you my reasons. It's important to me to finish this year. It's less than 2 months now. I'll take the money as a loan. I promise I will pay you back. That's the only way I'll take it. He agreed, feeling proud of her. The flight to Savannah was easy and calm. It was her first time on a plane in over a year, and the small jet made her a bit nervous. The Lexus she had booked felt strange to her after a year of driving her Focus. The base itself felt even stranger. She had never seen so many uniforms in one place. Even though her dress was plain, just below the knees with a high neck, many people noticed her. She was thankful that the building was easy to find. Major Stein welcomed her in the lobby and guided her to his office. Don't worry, we won't be interrupted. Can I get you something to drink? No, thank you. I don't think drinking will help with my nerves. He quickly tried to calm her down. Please, this is just a simple chat between two people who care about your husband. How is he? Do you talk often? She laughed softly. No, I had to pull him into court to get him to talk to me. We are starting marriage counseling, so I hope it helps. Can you tell me how he is mentally? That's your job, right? Instead of answering, he surprised her by asking, Mrs. Wilkes, has your husband had any fights lately? He fought with a cousin a while back and he hurt him badly. But it was a family thing. Did it have anything to do with you? Yes, his cousin and another man scared me. The cousin pushed me, but not in a bad way, just grabbed me. Anything else? Not that I know of. Luckily, JT never told her about the fight in prison. Mrs. Wilkes, what you tell me is private. Can you explain what led to your separation? Don't leave anything out, it might matter. Gwen told her story again, feeling a bit embarrassed. Before that, did he ever hurt you? No! One time I almost stepped in front of a car, and Hardy pulled me back really hard and it bruised my arm. He felt so bad and apologized for weeks. Until that morning, almost 3 years together, he hardly ever raised his voice. Every couple has arguments, but he was always calm and reasonable. That morning it felt like he was a different person. What do you know about his time in the military? He told me he went to Iraq twice, including the invasion. I know he was hurt. I've seen the scars, but he doesn't like to talk about it. Mrs. Wilkes, much of his work is secret, so I can't give you details. Your husband has special skills and was very good at his job. He could have been an officer. He was great at quickly judging situations, but he didn't work well with others. Many people feared him. Once he focused on a goal, the only way to stop him was to kill him. We ran many tests on your husband, physically and mentally. We showed him different levels of stress and watched how he reacted. He is very unique. Are you familiar with the term fight or flight? Good. In a fight or flight situation, a person feels threatened and adrenaline is released, giving them energy to either fight or run. Your husband, Mrs. Wilkes, has adrenal glands that can release 6 to 10 times the normal amount of adrenaline. It's very rare. Research shows it mostly happens in people from Scandinavia and the southern U.S. No one knows exactly why. It might explain stories of Viking warriors and wild people from the south. It's like when someone takes too much of a strong drug. They can hurt themselves and not even feel it. In the medical field, we call it Hulk syndrome, like the comic book character who turns from a normal person into a raging beast. That describes your husband well. He was fine for years. Your actions brought back this behavior. Did you know I have him on medicine to manage the adrenaline release? He didn't like it, but he did it anyway. He paused to let her think about what he said. She took the chance to ask a question. Sir, why is the military involved? No charges were filed, and this was kept quiet. He tried to sound calm and comforting. We're the military, Mrs. Wilkes. We have our ways. We just want to make sure your husband is safe and not hurting himself or anyone else. You think he is a threat to society? Not really, as long as he keeps taking his medicine and avoids stress. Do you think he can do that? Life is full of stress. I believe if he keeps seeing me and you both work on your marriage, he will be okay. Bill Goldberg is a good man and a great therapist. He has helped Hardy before and Hardy trusts him. I wish you both the best. He loves you very much. You know that, right? If anyone can help him stay strong, it's you. All you need to do is help him trust you again. By the way, do you know why your husband is in Mexico? I didn't know he was out of the country. We aren't sharing much about our lives right now. They talked for another hour, with him asking questions and her answering with questions of her own. He told her about how he saved his fellow soldiers in a small valley, not leaving anything out. To her shame, she had no idea he had 3 Purple Hearts, several letters of praise, and a silver star with oak leaf clusters. This was another important part of her husband's life that she didn't know about. Feeling tired, she went back to her hotel and took a nap. When she woke up, she got dressed, thinking about how to spend her evening. She decided to take a walk along the ocean, something she hadn't done in a year. The sound of the waves was soothing. Paula Dean's restaurant, Lady and Sons, was nice, and the food was good, but she couldn't help but compare it to the Sunday dinners at home. Homemade meals were always better. Food made by strangers, no matter how good it was, couldn't match the taste of food cooked with love by family. That made you want to try harder. Back at the hotel, she thought about having a drink at the bar. She hadn't had much alcohol except for an occasional beer with Joshua, and the memory of a drink that went wrong was still fresh in her mind. A band was starting to play. She sat and listened to a few songs, tapping her foot. The bar was full. Hunter Airfield was nearby, and Fort Stewart was only an hour away, so it seemed everyone in the area was there. Gwen had a few guys trying to dance with her and buy her drinks. She kept saying no, shaking her head until her neck was sore and trying to leave. Just then, a short woman with red hair moved to the bar next to her. The woman nodded to Gwen while waiting for her drink. "It's unfair of you," she said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "Coming in here looking pretty and turning the guys down. Many of them are far from home and lonely. They're young and looking for fun. You're like fresh meat, and telling them no is like holding a steak in front of a hungry dog." Gwen felt uneasy. "I just want a drink and then go back to my room." "Is there a man waiting for you upstairs?" "No, I'm here for work. I leave tomorrow." "Then why not stay a bit? Dance a little, give the guys something to think about. It could be fun." "That's what worries me. I tend to make bad choices when I try to have fun. I'm working hard to save my marriage right now. We're starting to talk again, and I don't want to mess that up." "Does anyone here know your husband?" "Some do. Like I said, I'm finished making mistakes. I have too much at stake." The woman smiled and held out her hand. "I'm Anne." Gwen shook her hand. "Gwen. Nice to meet you, Gwen. Are you sure you can't stay a bit longer? I could really use a friend." The band was about to start playing again, and a tall young man in military uniform approached Anne asking for a dance. "No, soldier, not me, but my friend Gwen might. Just so you know, she's married and plans to stay that way, so if you act up, she'll leave. Got it?" The man stood up straight, almost like he was in the army. "Yes, ma'am." "Good." She turned back to Gwen. "I'll find us a table and keep an eye on your purse. Dance a bit. He'll behave, I promise." So she danced and had fun. By the time she returned to the table, Anne was surrounded by people. She handed Gwen her purse. "My turn." Gwen watched as Anne danced, surprised by how graceful she was. They bought drinks, but when they saw Gwen wasn't drinking, they stopped trying to waste their money on her. When Anne came back, she took their purses and asked the bartender to keep them safe. Gwen looked at her in surprise. "Thieves hang around military places like vultures. Now we can both dance without worrying." And that's what they did. Gwen danced a couple of slow dances, one with a boy who looked very young, thinking he would be safe. He was all over the place, and she felt like she was dancing with an octopus. Finally, she broke free and went back to her table. He never asked her again. The second dance was with an older man, probably in his 50s. He was a smooth dancer and held her politely. She still had on her wedding rings, vowing to keep them on until her divorce was final, so she felt safe. After the dance, she kissed his cheek and thanked him. He smiled and squeezed her hand. She ended up dancing all night. It felt good to let loose. Before she knew it, the night was over. The band had finished and everyone was enjoying their last drinks of the night. Anne was keeping a close eye on Gwen, as if it was her job to make sure she was okay. Gwen had finally decided to have a few more drinks. The guys had kept buying rounds, hoping it would help her relax, but most of the drinks just sat on the table. Now that the night was ending and she was heading straight to her room, she chugged a few more drinks, feeling more than a little tipsy. When she stood up and stumbled, Anne quickly helped her stay balanced. "Come on, darling, let's get you to your room," she said gently. It seemed like a good idea, so Gwen leaned against Anne and fished her room card out of her purse. Anne led her to the elevator. The ride was quiet, but Anne noticed Gwen tearing up. "What's the matter, Gwen?" she asked softly. "I miss my husband. He should be here with me, not you. We used to go out like this, and he would always take care of me. Now I feel alone and frustrated. I don't think I'll ever be able to get him back," she said, tears streaming down her face as she hugged Anne tightly. Feeling helpless, Anne patted her back and rubbed her shoulders to offer a little comfort. They moved slowly down the hall, leaning on each other for support. Anne dropped the keycard twice, and they nearly fell into the room when it opened, both giggling like teenagers. Gwen looked at the minibar and said, "Want a drink before bed?" Anne smiled and replied, "One more can't hurt, can it?" One more drink didn't hurt, but 6 definitely did. By that point, Anne knew she was not in any shape to drive, and Gwen was almost completely out. Anne helped her to the bathroom, got her undressed, and tucked her into bed. She stepped back and admired Gwen's beauty. She had been interested in both men and women for 15 years. Normally, she preferred men, but sometimes she found a woman's touch appealing, especially in the right situation. Slowly, Anne removed her clothes. She planned to sleep in the other bed, but changed her mind. She wouldn't try anything while Gwen was out cold, but if they woke up together, who knew what might happen? A warm body next to hers sounded much better than sleeping alone. As she pulled back the covers, Gwen's purse fell to the floor and spilled its contents. Anne picked it up and gathered the items. When she saw Gwen's wallet open, she was shocked. Inside was a photo of Gwen and a man, obviously her husband. The man's face looked familiar. She held the picture up to the light. Imagining him with longer hair and a beard, she realized she knew exactly who he was. Hardy Wilkes. So this was the famous wife. Anne was relieved she hadn't tried anything. That could have turned out very complicated. Still, she was feeling lonely, and Gwen was there. It would be nice just to sleep together. Anne carefully climbed into bed, and Gwen instinctively cuddled up to her. Anne fell asleep with her arms around Gwen. Later in the night, Anne woke up to find they had turned over, and now Gwen was pressed against her, with her arms around her. Anne felt happy but had to fight the temptation before falling asleep again. A loud scream broke Anne's sleep. She saw Gwen sitting up in bed, holding the covers to her chest. "What happened last night?" Gwen shouted. Anne was about to explain, but she decided to have a little fun first. "You don't remember? You were amazing. Better than anyone I've ever been with. You were so energetic, I almost can't believe it." Gwen screamed again and rushed to the bathroom. Anne waited a moment and then followed her inside. Gwen was sitting on the toilet, crying. "Gwen, listen, nothing happened. I was just having a little fun with you. You were drunk, I was drunk, and I didn't want to sleep alone. You hear me? Nothing happened." "But I woke up and felt you against me," Gwen stammered. "Yes, we were in bed together, darling. It's normal to spoon while sleeping. As for what you felt, I was asleep. It didn't mean anything," Anne said playfully. She poked her tongue out at Gwen. Unless you want it to mean something. I'm bi, you know, and I could be a lot of fun. Gwen pushed her away, but Anne stood her ground. Gwen, stop. I'm only teasing you. Being hungover is making you grumpy. Nothing happened last night. Nothing will happen. Just calm down. Now, do you want to shower first, or should we do it together? Gwen slammed the bathroom door while Anne laughed. After they showered and got dressed, both felt a bit better. Anne talked with Gwen after her shower. Sober, she found Anne to be funny, smart, and down to earth. Are you really bi? Gwen asked, curiosity in her voice. Yep. Does that bother you? No, not really. I probably won't see you again, so can you tell me what it's like with a woman? Anne grinned. I can't describe it well. It's like trying to explain what an orange tastes like to someone who has only eaten apples. But it's usually softer and more emotional, at least for me. With a mischievous look in her eyes, she added, I could just show you, you know. Gwen was taken aback. I've thought about it before. I had a friend in college who really wanted me. I almost gave in a couple of times. If I was single, I might say yes, but I still want my husband back. But if that doesn't work out, give me your card. I might call you. Anne quickly handed her a business card. Gwen looked at it, surprised. You're in the army? Yes, I've been a soldier for 12 years. What's your job? Intelligence, but I can't say more than that. It was too late for breakfast, but Anne remembered a small place that served brunch. Things were going well until Anne ordered a mimosa. Gwen noticed Anne's expression. What's wrong? Nothing, I just don't like that drink. But please, enjoy it. Anne wanted to see her off at the airport. She held out her hand. Thanks, Gwen. This has been quite a journey. I hope things go well for you. Then, in a surprising move, Gwen hugged the smaller woman and kissed her gently. She stepped back. There, that should give you something to think about. I'll never forget you. I hope when you find someone to be with, they appreciate you. And who knows, if I can't get my husband back, I'll call you. Goodbye. Gwen walked away, laughing. Wow, thought Anne. If anyone can handle Hardy, it's her. The case against Escobar was heating up, and Don Vincente was starting to feel nervous. His attempts to pressure the district attorney and the police were not working. Bribing them wasn't helping either. It was time to try something new. First, he thought about the officer who made the arrest. The officer was experienced, had no close family, and was tough. Whenever Don Vincente tried to reach out, the officer reported it to the DEA, who wanted to take over. Next, he turned to the district attorney and his team. Direct pressure wasn't working, so he decided to get sneaky. His first plan failed badly and put 2 of his men in jail. He knew about Gwen's past with drugs and planned to use it. He wanted to hide a large amount of drugs in her car and leave an anonymous tip. If he could get her out of the way, it would buy him time. His men watched Gwen. She was pretty regular, really boring. She only left home to spend the weekends with her husband's grandfather, and that was just overnight. Her home had security cameras, but he had the tools to deal with that. To reduce risk, they decided to put the drugs in her car. They picked a cloudy, stormy night to keep people inside. They opened her trunk easily and hidden a bag with 12 ounces of drugs under the spare tire. They even took her fingerprints from her trash to leave on the bag. What he didn't know was that Gwen wasn't the only one being watched. Hardy had hired 8 men, 6 of them cousins, to keep an eye on her. Most were ex-military. 4 had their own vehicles, and he bought 6 more to give to the team. They waited around her 24 hours a day, and no one noticed them. They watched everyone and even recorded interesting people. So they were there when 2 men looked through her trash and took the bag with her fingerprints. They were there again when they put the drugs in her car. One was local and the other was Hispanic. Once the men left, they opened the trunk and took the bag. They split the drugs into 2 bags, putting one in the local's car and the other in the visitor's car. Don Vincente wanted attention, so he tipped off local news about an important public figure who would soon be arrested. Deciding to enjoy the show, he watched from a limo the next morning as Gwen showed up for work. Police surrounded her car while news crews filmed everything. Gwen had no idea what was happening and was very angry. Since she had a good reputation, they didn't handcuff her but made her wait in the back of a police car. They found no drugs. When Don Vincente learned that no drugs were found, he was furious. He ordered his driver to leave but was blocked by an old truck backing up to his bumper and a large SUV behind him. He felt a quick sense of panic. This was how he got rid of enemies back home. A young man in a suit walked up to the limo, shoved an envelope under the wiper, waved, and left. The truck and SUV drove away. Don Vincente sat there for a moment, frozen. "Don't just sit there. Get me that envelope," he snapped. One of his bodyguards opened it. Inside was a little firework known as a party popper. It went off with a soft pop, sending some confetti into the air. Everyone jumped at the sound. The envelope contained a single piece of paper with a short message in big letters. "Back off!" The police were embarrassed. In a statement, the assistant chief apologized and warned against making false claims that waste police time and resources. The news announcer said, "In other news, a local man with a long criminal history was arrested after police found a large amount of drugs in his car. He says he knew nothing about the drugs." An unnamed foreign man was stopped on Interstate 65 South and caught with a similar amount of drugs in the same way. The DEA is looking into both cases. The station manager urged law enforcement to do something about the growing drug problem. The next day, almost every newspaper in Birmingham had the same editorial. Public opinion was shifting, fueled by a political group with a lot of money. Things were getting tense for Escobar and his interests. At first, Gwen had no idea that anyone was watching her. She was upset that someone had made a false report to make her look bad, but she quickly moved on from it. She was leaving the Chambers, a popular bar for lawyers and court staff, when 3 men suddenly showed up. 2 of them grabbed her while the other one put a hood over her head. Just before it covered her eyes, she saw a flash of blonde rush out of the dark, followed by shouting and screaming. Someone picked her up and started carrying her away. She tried to yell when the hood came off, but a man put his hand over her mouth. "Be quiet, Aunt Gwen. I need to get you out of here." That made her feel safe. She hugged him and began to cry. He put her in the back of a van. Another man she didn't know quickly checked on her. "You're okay, Miss Gwen. Just calm down. We've got you." "Who are you?" "Family, that's all you need to know for now. We're taking you to Grandpa Hardy's house for the night. You'll be home in the morning, okay?" Aunt Hildy welcomed her inside, helped her to bed, and stayed with her until she calmed down. "What's going on, Aunt Hildy?" "Sweetheart, I can't tell you everything." "It's Hardy, isn't it? He's looking after me." Hildy smiled. "I can't say yes or no to that." "But how did he know to be there?" "Let's pretend a man loves a woman very much, but he won't say it. He just wants to keep her safe. Thanks to some bad choices she made, he has the money to help protect her." "Speaking of Hardy, he's okay, right? He didn't get hurt, did he?" Gwen said it all very quickly. "I don't think so, dear. Your cousins didn't say anything, so I guess not. Now sleep. Ham and eggs for breakfast." After a restless night, she had trouble eating the big breakfast Aunt Hildy made. Her new cousins enjoyed it, though. While hugging them goodbye, she felt something hard at Joshua's side. She pulled back his shirt and saw a big gun. "I want the truth. What have I gotten you into?" Joshua looked a bit shy. "Well, when you can't get to a person directly, it's often easier to protect a family member. We prefer being safe. Don't worry. Take care of things and it will all be over soon." She noticed more cousins than usual around the house. "How many does Hardy have watching over Grandpa and Hildy?" she asked as they drove away. "Enough. Some you can't even see. They'll be fine." When he dropped her off, he walked her in. He gave her some advice before leaving. "You'll see me and a few familiar faces sometimes. Don't act like you know us. Remember, when this is all done, we'll be gone. One more question. How did Hardy know they were going to try something last night?" "He didn't. He was just getting an update from us. It was just lucky timing." She hugged him and told him to thank the rest of his team. At lunch, Karen asked her, "Did you hear what happened last night at the Chambers?" Gwen was glad her mouth was full. It gave her a moment to think of her answer. "No, I was there but left early. What happened?" "There was a fight in the back parking lot. When the police came, they found 2 men badly hurt. They wouldn't talk, so the police held them for a few hours and then let them go." "What were they doing there?" "The police think it was a drug deal gone wrong. There are so many around these days." Gwen agreed. "Yeah, you can't feel safe anywhere anymore." As they stood up to leave, she asked how the counseling sessions were going. "We finished the individual ones, and our first group session is this week. I hope it goes well. Will Hardy be able to drive by then?" "Why wouldn't he be?" "Well, Grandpa told me this morning that his arm was hurt, and he had a bad cut that needed stitches. He's got his arm in a sling. He said he fell off a tractor while helping Joshua. Gwen felt a little dizzy. Grandpa also treated a man who was hurt badly. He fell off a tractor, too. Dangerous machines, tractors. Things got worse. One of the cousins who wasn't even involved got hurt badly. In response, 6 small-time dealers were caught in a stolen van with lots of drugs that they took from their delivery people. Don Vincente had to fly to San Diego to start a new supply route. His little war was costing him a lot of money, and the DEA and local police seemed to know about his shipments even before they left the country. Very few big shipments were getting through. A Coast Guard boat, acting on a tip, seized one of his ships with $10 million worth of cocaine and marijuana. He had a serious problem that he needed to fix quickly. Other cartels thought he was losing his grip, and they were starting to threaten his business. He had always liked San Diego. While he was there, he talked to people about new routes when they mentioned a local lawyer. You might want to hire him. He knows what we do and is okay with it. In fact, he's a customer and even invested some money. He's pretty smart when he's not using drugs. Allan Hovis hated his life. He had promised to do something, so he moved west and finally settled in San Diego. He sent out his resume to important law firms, but the few interviews he got didn't go anywhere. He was actually hired twice, but he turned them down when he found out he had to take a drug test. His money was running low, so he decided to start his own office. Things were tough. He went from flying on private jets to faraway places to rushing to the local hospital. His luck improved when he defended a small-time drug dealer. He got him off on a legal technicality, and as a thank you, the dealer gave him an ounce of drugs. Allan then thought about investing his money. He had $70,000 left from his last payout. He was allowed to invest $50,000, with the understanding that he would help the dealer and his friends if they needed it. They would call him from time to time. He won some cases and lost others, but he always did his best for them. They made sure to pay him. His original investment grew to almost $200,000, and he let it grow even more. His goal was to reach $10 million so he could retire on an island and live in a nice house filled with good things. Don Vincente found Allan on a good day. Allan was calm, but he still felt nervous around him. Don Vincente had a strong presence. "Diego talks well of you. I am looking for some business help around here. He said you could assist me when needed." Allan sensed opportunity. "Diego is very generous. I will help a friend of his however I can." "Thank you. I have a small problem back east, so I am looking for options here. Your Southern Americans can be tough to deal with and don't always listen." "I understand, Don Vincente. I had a bad experience with a rude person from the South last year. It is part of why I came west, actually. If I get the chance, I would make sure that person and his wife regret crossing paths with me." Don Vincente was in a good mood and had enjoyed a drink, so he was less careful than he should have been. "Yes, don't forget your enemies. I promise, after we handle this, that man and his wife will regret knowing my name." Allan nearly spit out his drink. "Wilkes? You mean Hardy and Gwen Wilkes?" "Yes, that's them. You know of them?" "Yes, Don Vincente, I do. They have caused me a lot of trouble lately." Don Vincente laughed. "Then you know the saying, 'The enemy of my enemy is my friend.' I believe you could become my friend. Let me share my issues with the Wilkes family." He shared a short story about his troubles with them. "I have tried many things to fix this, but nothing has worked. Every time I think I have a plan, it falls apart. What would it take to make this right? You would have my deep thanks and a good amount of money. Your dream of retiring quickly could happen much sooner if you help me." "Consider it done, my patron. I will leave for the East Coast tomorrow. If you need anything else, let me know." There was more to do. Allan didn't know that his car was filled with illegal drugs. It was a little extra for Don Vincente. He gave Allan $10,000 for the trip, telling him to pay with cash at small gas stations and diners to avoid being seen. This way it would look like Allan never left town. The one-on-one meetings went pretty well. Hardy already had an idea, but Gwen quickly learned that avoiding the truth would not work. Bill insisted on honesty and didn't drop the topic until he got it. After the meetings, he went over his notes, waiting for the big moment. Gwen arrived 15 minutes early, promising herself she would never be late again. Hardy was already there. "Great. Since you're both here, we can start a bit early. Here's how it will go. I will talk for a while, then you can each share your thoughts. But stay on topic or we will end the session right away and it won't count. Do you both understand? Hardy? I get it, Bill. Can we move on? Soon. Gwen, do you understand? Yes, Bill. I'll follow the rules. Good. Now for the next few minutes, only I will speak. I want to go over some things from your solo sessions and start my therapy approach. He paused, looking at them. They sat in chairs on opposite sides of the room. Gwen started to move hers closer, but Bill stopped her. Please keep the chairs as they are. There's a reason for this. First, you both come from very different backgrounds. Next, you're nearly a generation apart in age. Your values were very different during your marriage. In fact, you are nearly opposite in every way except two. One, for some unknown reason, you love each other. Now, Hardy, don't get upset. I didn't say you have to stay together. It's just what you both admit. Second, and most important, you don't really know each other. You didn't truly meet before you got married. You went into it with lies and secrets. I know we are going to change that. The rest of this session, and maybe the next one or two, will focus on you getting to know each other. Think of it like a first date. You are interested, or you wouldn't have agreed to this. So, let's start with introductions. Hardy, please stand up, go over, shake her hand, and introduce yourself. Don't be shy. He looked worried, as if it was a big task. Bill encouraged him. Go ahead, Hardy, speak up, she's waiting. Gwen stood up. Hardy walked over, stopping a bit away from her. Hello, I'm Hardy Wilkes. How are you this evening? His voice was flat but clear. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Wilkes. I'm Canada. I'm feeling better tonight than I have for a long time, thanks for asking. She extended her hand. Don't be rude, Hardy. Shake her hand, it won't hurt you. Bill was smiling, but they couldn't see him. Hardy looked shy, reaching out like he was afraid of being hurt. Gwen took his hand gently and held it for a moment. All right, now please sit down. Would you like to ask her some questions? It could be fun to learn more about her. Remember, stick to easy questions, nothing about past relationships. Just as Hardy was thinking of a question, Gwen spoke first. I'll start. My name is Gwen. I'm a lawyer and currently work as an assistant district attorney in Jefferson County. I grew up in Boston. Did you notice my accent? It has softened since I moved here, but some still notice it. I'm 27 years old. I was homeschooled in my teenage years and started college just after I turned 16. I didn't take breaks and got my law license by 22. I began working for my dad. He owns a law firm called Canada and Associates. He's been a lawyer for 5 generations. It's in our family. She paused, feeling she might have shared too much. Great, Gwen. Now, Hardy, would you like to share where you grew up? Hardy took a deep breath to find the right words. I know Canada and Associates. They have an office here. They're a good, respected firm. I know Greg Canada personally. He's a great guy. People say his daughter was a little spoiled, but I wouldn't believe everything I hear. Bill was about to jump in, but Hardy kept talking, noticing Gwen flinch at the last comment. My family was seen as poor white trash around here. My mom cheated and my sister followed her. My dad was a minor criminal and I kind of followed him too. Thankfully, some helpful friends got me into the military. I served 2 tours in Iraq before I had to leave the army due to injuries. I got physical and emotional help and ended up as a lawyer. I have a lot of family around here, some good, some not so good. I guess I'm in the middle. No one knows where I'll end up. I believe you will be okay in the end. Good people find their way. Despite where you come from, you've worked hard to improve yourself, and I admire that. By the way, I see your arm is hurt. Are you all right? Gwen's voice held clear concern. Hardy chuckled. I'll be fine. It was a farming accident. You have to be careful around dangerous tools. Did you break the tools? She smiled. Well, I did chip some paint and broke a few parts, but they've been fixed. Bill jumped in, wanting to steer the conversation back. As interesting as this chat is, let's get back on track. Let me ask a couple of questions. Gwen, let's start simple. Where do you see yourself in 10 years, both in your career and in your personal life? Where do you think you might live? That's an easy one, Bill. I see myself in a loving relationship, happily married to the man I love with maybe 1 or 2 kids. I want to stay in this area because I have family and friends here and I like it. As for my career, I can't say for sure. We might not need to work, so I could be a stay-at-home mom until my kids are older. I picture my husband as a gentleman farmer as long as he stays away from heavy machinery." She couldn't resist a little grin. "And you, Hardy, what do you think of that plan?" "Honestly, that's not the picture I have. You seem too focused on your goals, a bit too self-centered to settle down with a family." Before Bill could jump in, Gwen replied, "That might have been true last year, but my priorities have changed. My family is important to me now. The more I think about making others happy, the less I worry about silly things. I love being a lawyer, whether in court or meetings, but I've learned it doesn't give you warmth at night or the comfort of someone telling you they love you. That's what truly matters." Bill watched the two of them closely, seeing Hardy's feelings shift from sad to frustrated to doubtful. It was time to change the topic. "Hardy, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Hardy let out a sound of frustration. "The way things are going, I might be dead in 10 years. If I'm still here, I hope to be practicing law, and maybe, just maybe, I'll have people who care about me. There could even be a chance I might have a child or two, if I'm not too old. Who knows?" Bill glanced at the clock. "Time's up for now. I want you both to think about something for next time. I want you to really consider it. Write it down if it helps. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to define love, not in a general way, but your own personal definition. We'll compare your definitions individually first, and then in our next session, I want you to read them to each other. Explain any parts if needed. See you next week." Gwen lingered as Hardy left. "Do I have a chance with him?" Bill gave a classic non-answer. "That's not something for me to decide. Good night, Gwen." Allan was in a bad mood, 2 long days on the road. He got a speeding ticket in Texas for going 15 miles over the limit. There went his plan to go unnoticed. He talked the cop down to a fine of just 10 miles over the speed limit. This meant he didn't have to go to court. He promised to pay the fine right away. The party in Phoenix had been fun. There were 2 young women and plenty of drugs. He really didn't want it to end. 2 hours away from Birmingham, he called Gwen. Don Vincente was nice enough to give him her new number. "Gwen, baby, what's going on? You miss me?" She knew it was him, but she pretended not to. "Who is this?" she asked sharply. "It's Allan. Are you ready for some fun again?" "I don't know how you got my number, and I don't care. Forget it, and don't call me again. I hope you're unhappy." She hung up the phone. He called right back. "Wait, before you hang up, I need to tell you something. I have pictures of you in Paris, and you are not dressed. We need to talk." She was annoyed. Another person bothering her life. "Just tell me what you want, Allan. Look, as much as I would love to have fun like last time, this is about business. Because of you, your dad, and your husband, my life is hard. I have new friends now, and I'm starting fresh. Meet me, and I will explain everything." She agreed to meet him at a truck stop outside of town. As soon as she hung up, she called the judge. "I can't let Hardy find out Allan is here. If he knows, he'll be furious. He'll misunderstand and never take me back. What should I do?" JT was not strong, but his mind was still sharp. "Call him back. Change where you're meeting to the address I'll give you. Tell him what he wants to hear and just get him there." After she hung up, he called his son-in-law. "Will Rob, I have a big problem coming your way." He explained the situation, and they made a plan together. Just as Hardy came out of the courthouse, a deputy, his cousin Eb, stopped him. "Hardy, you need to come with me. Don't be mad, but I need to put these handcuffs on you to make it look real. I will put you in the back seat. I'll explain later." Will Rob said it was important. Hardy wasn't happy about being cuffed, but he trusted Will. The sun was going down, and the shadows were long as they drove into the bright light. He couldn't see exactly where they stopped. They were at an old, run-down farmhouse covered in weeds and dirt. 3 cars were already there. Will's, Gwen's, and a red Corvette he didn't recognize. He felt a knot in his stomach and his heart raced. He had stopped taking pills until the trouble with the Escobar kid was over. Now he felt he needed something to help him. Eb turned the car a bit, and he saw Allan. Allan spoke quietly, but the words sent chills down Eb's spine. "Eb, let me out of the car and take off these cuffs." "Hardy, Will said to keep you here. He'll be here soon to explain. JT is with him. They will protect Gwen. Try to relax." "I need out now, Eb. Do it." Will walked over. "Hardy, stay calm. Gwen called us and said this guy was threatening her. She worried you'd find out and misunderstand. He and I are going to talk, and then I will ask him to leave our state for good. It will be over soon, and we can all go home." Allan felt scared. Sheriff Andy and the deputy didn't seem friendly. He saw the old man, JT, and he looked really angry. Allan regretted coming to this secret place, but he thought it would work for him. He planned to show Gwen the pictures and make her do something to mess with the Escobar trial. But when the cops showed up, everything changed fast. He didn't want to admit it, but every time he looked at Hardy, he felt sick, remembering the pain he had been through. He had taken some drugs just before this meeting. He had more hidden in the car. He'd be in big trouble if they started searching. The sheriff came over and stared at him until he felt uncomfortable. He jumped when the sheriff finally spoke. "Mr. Hovis, I'm hearing bad things about you. You're in my county, threatening one of our people. That's not okay. Do you know the jail time for trying to blackmail someone here? The guys in Huntsville would love to have you as a visitor, especially a lawyer like you. Some might even think you're attractive, but I wouldn't depend on that." Suddenly, his careful plan seemed silly. He looked for an escape. With just enough drugs in him, he tried to act tough. "Hold on, I was just here to catch up with an old friend. I don't know what she told you, but unless you can prove I did something wrong, I'm leaving." "That man," the sheriff said, pointing at Hardy, "already hit me once. Luckily for him, I couldn't fight back at the time, or it would have gone differently. You can't match with me, Wilkes. Good thing you're locked up. I would love to show off in front of your woman. But wait, she was with me, so she was mine." Hardy leaned back and kicked the car door as hard as he could. When he saw it wouldn't budge, he kicked the window. It didn't break, but it started to bend outward. Frustrated, he tried the other window, hitting it hard enough to shatter it. He tried to crawl through while Eb and Will pushed him back. He was red-faced and practically shouting. JT used a strong voice that showed he had spent many years in court. He hit the hood of the Corvette with his cane and yelled, "Enough! Hardy, behave right now. You, Yankee boy, be quiet. If you say one more word, I will tell them to let him go. I will defend him myself. He won't spend 3 years in a crazy house because I have people to swear he was not in his right mind. You'll be dead so no one can argue about it. If you want to live, I suggest you listen to our sheriff. Mr. Hovis, if it were up to me, and it is, I would arrest you right now. But since it could hurt some good people, you get one chance. They would get hurt, but you would still end up in jail. Get in that shiny car and get out of my county. Don't come back. This is your only chance. Take it before I change my mind." He was a little high, but he was still smart enough to know it was time to leave. Don Vincente would be angry, but he would find a way to make it right. They told him to empty his pockets, and while doing that, he realized his cell phone was missing. It had important pictures on it. He needed it back and hoped to use it again. "Where's my phone?" Gwen smiled sweetly. "I'm really sorry, Allan. It must have fallen off your hood, and I accidentally stepped on it. Oops. Send me the bill for a new one. Now leave and have a bad life." She had stomped the phone to pieces. He wanted to try to save it, but the sheriff told him to leave it. Hardy was still struggling, and the dog in the deputy's car kept barking loudly. He left as quickly as he could. Hardy calmed down after about 10 minutes, but the dog was still barking. "What's wrong with Belle? She's been going wild since you showed up." Eb smiled at his boss. "I bet there were drugs in that car. A lot, judging by how she's acting." "Interesting," said Will Robb, taking out his phone. "Coy, how are you? Feeling good about the election? That state trooper wants to be sheriff badly, and he has money behind him. Are you still pushing your tough on crime campaign, still liking Yankees, lawyers, and drug dealers? I might just make your day. I've got a tip for you. In about 30 minutes, a big blonde guy in a shiny red Corvette is going to speed through your county heading north. I heard he was carrying drugs, but I got the info too late to do anything about it." "Yes, I'm still getting tips all the time. Someone really wants to catch those Mexicans, and I'm getting the rewards. I was going to retire next year, but if this continues, the voters will be mad if I try to leave." "Coy, don't tell anyone I told you. I don't want my source to get upset. They might have more info. You're welcome. Say hi to Myra for me. See you later." He hung up the phone with a big grin. "Well, everyone, I've done my duty for today. Time to go home. Dinner is waiting. Hardy, you'll pay for those windows. Good night, Miss Gwen. See you in court." Gwen was trying to explain things to Hardy, but he just sat there, silent. She sighed and gave up, then left. An hour later, Allan was still angry about what had happened. He stopped at a rest area and did a couple of lines to calm himself down. It helped a bit. Suddenly, blue lights flashed behind him. Great, not again. First Texas, now this. He looked down and swore. The speedometer showed 95. He pulled over and was about to put on a sad face when another patrol car drove in front of him and another parked next to him, trapping him in. 2 deputies and a state trooper drew their guns and ordered him out of the car and onto the ground. 10 minutes later, he was handcuffed in the back of one of the patrol cars when the sheriff and 2 DEA vans arrived, along with 2 TV news crews. Wow, they must really dislike speeders. One of the DEA vans had 2 dogs that were almost tearing apart his car. He got a really bad feeling. The next morning, his story was all over the news. The news anchor could barely contain their excitement. A traffic stop last night brought surprising results. Allan, a lawyer from California, was pulled over for speeding, 25 miles over the limit. A quick search found drugs in the car. It was taken to the DEA lab in Montgomery, where they discovered 9 pounds of cocaine hidden in different parts of the vehicle. There are rumors that the lawyer is linked to a Mexican drug cartel, yet another sign of the growing drug problem coming from the South. They kept Allan in a secure room, saying it was for safety, as the cartels had been known to work with terrorists. He knew he was in big trouble. After getting some safety promises, he started talking. The DEA agents assured him he would be safe, but they knew that if the cartel wanted him, nothing could truly protect him. Their hope was to keep him alive long enough to testify. Don Vicente was furious. He knew the weak nature of the California lawyer. He would definitely talk. It might be a good time to go home for a while. In truth, he didn't like his nephew much, but he had promised his sister he would keep him safe. Plus, now it had become a matter of pride. If he lost this, he would lose his support. He was very stressed when luck brought him a surprise. A man who could help reached out to one of his workers. This man was checked out and seemed interesting. They arranged a meeting. He didn't like Ronnie Wilkes at first glance. A man who could betray his family couldn't be trusted. But Ronnie had a plan that might work. Listen, we both know there's no way to reach his wife. She is protected by 3 layers of security. But the man he cares about most, his grandfather, has a routine. Every 2 weeks, he and Aunt Hildy go to town. She grocery shops and gets her hair done, while he gets his hair cut and picks up any needed supplies for the farm before they meet for lunch at the diner. He'll be at Tommy's barber shop by 10 o'clock. He'll have 2 guys with him. One stays outside and the other goes in. That's when he's vulnerable. I'll have a car waiting in the alley. I'll go in with some excuse to get him out the back door. We'll have him in the car before he even knows what hit him. He won't suspect anything after all. I'm family and I'm just trying to help. What do you want in return? Ronnie looked uneasy for the first time. I need a big payment from my guys, enough to leave town and start fresh. I'd also like to work for you. I'm sure I can be helpful. Don Vicente agreed, even though he would never trust a traitor. He was correct. When this all began, Hardy went to talk to Roy. Roy, I'm sure you know trouble is coming. Your business will get hurt, and I can't change that. When the law comes down hard, they'll go after everyone. Before you get hurt, tell me, how much does your crew make in a month? Don't lie to me. The number was much smaller than he expected. Okay, here's the deal. I'll pay you what you make, plus 10% if you keep a low profile for the next 2 or 3 months. I'll also need some of your guys to watch a few people. I'm willing to pay extra for that. Can we agree? They could and did. All activities would stop except for bookmaking, which he had commitments for that he couldn't break. Hardy surprised him. You know, I would have done this for free. Family comes first. Roy was touched. Thanks, Cousin Roy, but my actions will hurt your business, and I can't carry that weight on my conscience. Family comes first. They shook hands. Will Robb came by Hardy's office. Got a minute? Hardy pointed to a chair and asked Crystal to make some coffee. What's on your mind, Will? First, Bonnie is in town for a few days and wants to see you. Bonnie was his daughter, a few years younger than Hardy. Hardy smiled. How's our dear state senator? Tell her to set the time and place. I'll let her update you on her life. I'm sure she'll call. He sat quietly for a moment. Spit it out, Will, before you explode. I see what's happening. I think I know who's behind all those tips I've been getting. I'm not sure where the info comes from, and as long as it keeps coming, I don't care. When the thieves go quiet, it makes me uneasy. Thank goodness for the pimps. They keep the guys busy. Bad things are on the way, and I want your word that average people won't get hurt. Keep your fight private and I won't have to ask any embarrassing questions. Do you understand? Hardy smiled. Will Rob, I have no idea what you're talking about. But in a made-up situation, I would assure you that no effort would be spared to protect the innocent. Happy now? As happy as I'm going to get, I guess. Damn, Hardy, I like you, but things get more complicated every time you're around. I'll tell Bonnie to call. Thanks for the coffee. The plan went off without a hitch. Ronnie rushed into the barber shop just as Joshua was getting out of the chair. Joshua, we need to get you out now! I have a car waiting out back and they're watching the front. Roy found out they were going to grab you. Let's go! He led Joshua through the back, with the younger cousin following. Quick, turn around! The younger man turned, and Ronnie hit him on the head, knocking him out cold. Joshua tried to fight back, but Ronnie stunned him too. Hardy received an email with pictures in 45 minutes. Joshua was tied to a chair with a big lump on his head. The message was short. She throws the trial or he dies. Respond by 10 tomorrow. Hardy felt the anger rising and embraced it. It was a long night. His first action was to get Gwen out of town without her knowing Joshua was taken. 4 cars left town. No one knew which one she was in. Outside of town, they picked up 4 more cars, split into pairs with the first group, and went in different directions. By 9 the next morning, Don Vincente received a response. There was a picture of Raul, beaten and hardly recognizable. The message was clear. Call this cell before 11 or Raul dies at noon. No one can keep him safe. Don Vincente checked on Raul. There had been a near riot, and oddly, Raul was the only one badly hurt. Security was tight, and there were rumors someone was going to die at noon. At 10:30, he made the call. A man will be in a black truck in the parking lot of the Piggly Wiggly on 9th. Follow him. Bring as many as you want with you, but one of them must be my grandfather. By 4 at the latest. Raul will live until 6 unless I get what I want. More pictures will come at 2 as a reminder. He ended the call. Don Vincente felt uneasy. There were no offers to talk, no threats, and no arguments. He turned pale when he saw the next set of pictures. They were of his wife and twin daughters, laughing at their villa in Cozumel. The photos were taken just 45 minutes ago. 5 big SUVs were close behind the truck as it left town. The vehicles traveled down a narrow road until the truck stopped at a gate. The driver opened it, waved them through, then locked it and walked away. A well-kept path led through fields and sparse woods until it reached a pond. 2 oak trees stood beside the pond, each with picnic tables in the shade. The area was open for 400 yards, filled with freshly plowed fields and small wheat plants. Hardy was sitting under the trees with a fishing rod and a cooler next to him. He held a beer in his hand and set the bottle on the table when he saw them. 18 men climbed out of the SUVs. 16 were armed, carrying everything from machine guns to shotguns. Don Vincente marched forward, trying not to lose his cool. Before he could shout, Hardy spoke up first. Please sign this paper and give me $100. It was a contract for Hardy to help with his nephew's defense. This makes it so I can't share details about our meeting. You see how this helps you? A $100 bill appeared, and Vincente signed the paper. Then Vincente lost control. You arrogant fool! How dare you threaten my family! I will enjoy watching you suffer! Hardy let Vincente finish his rant. When he was done, Hardy calmly said, Beer bottle. Suddenly, the bottle shattered into tiny pieces without a sound. He looked at the shocked faces around him and smiled. Suppressors are great, aren't they? And these earbuds can pick up sounds from very far away. Look at your chests. Vincente glanced down and saw 3 red dots on his chest. He quickly looked around. They are in the trees. That's over 400 yards, he gasped. Hardy smiled wider. Yes, 3 of them are former soldiers, snipers. One even has a record for a shot almost 900 yards away. The others are good hunters. You can't see them, but there are 3 more a lot closer. Don't worry. All I want to do is talk. I just needed your attention. Tell your men to stay calm. No one needs to get hurt today. How about we sit in the shade and have a beer? But first, send Grandpa across the field. You don't need him anymore. You have me now, I promise. Unless you start trouble, there will be no violence today. Vincente said something in Spanish. One of his men opened a door, and Joshua and Ronnie stepped out. Wow, Ronnie, they got you too? Well, can you help him over the field? Hardy had heard his grandpa curse before, but never like this. He's the one who got me, the one who put me in this mess. He's a no-good traitor. You should never expect this from family. Is that true, Ronnie? His voice was calm, but Ronnie could see death in Hardy's eyes. Well, not exactly, Joshua exploded with anger. Yes, exactly. Just ask him. He pointed to Vincente, who nodded. You know how it goes. Use whatever works. Hardy looked Ronnie over. When this is over, we have to talk. Ronnie felt a chill creep up his spine. People said that happened when someone was close to death. Enough family talk. Don Vincente, if you would. They walked over to the picnic table and watched as Joshua headed into the trees. Hardy opened his laptop. Look at this. On the screen was a video of Vincente's villa with his family on the beach. They seemed to be looking for something and soon began laughing. A big remote-controlled boat splashed through the waves, shooting fireworks out of its sides. It had 3 packages on its deck. When it reached the shore, the bodyguards pulled it in, laughing. The women and kids excitedly tore open the packages. Vincente watched in horror. Don't worry, Mr. Escobar. You just surprised your family with a thoughtful gift. They knew it was coming, but not what it was. Your wife received a nice note saying how sorry you are for being away from home so much. Look at your lovely daughters. They got gold lockets and new smartphones so you can say goodnight wherever you are. Your wife got the same phone, and you know how much she loves emeralds. She got a beautiful necklace. You wrote in your note that she is your moon and stars, and this is just a small gift. You'll have a warm welcome when you get back. Oh, and the note is in your handwriting, using the nickname you have for her. Here, this one is yours. I know you will check it, but it's clean. She should be calling soon. Just then, the phone rang. He held it up cautiously before answering. It was his wife, crying, telling him how amazing he was, how much she loved him, and when he was coming home. She also said he would get a special gift when he returned. After hanging up, his kids called, one right after the other. Hardy smiled. Family is great, isn't it? I don't know what I would do without mine. Now let's get serious. Those gifts could have been dangerous. I don't have all your money, but I have some in a fund that only I or 2 trusted people can access. If anyone in my family is hurt, your family will pay. You will stay alive, but I want you to remember this for a long time. Vincente looked into his eyes. You're a monster, Hardy replied evenly. We're both monsters, Mr. Escobar. Here's a simpler version of your story, focusing on clear and straightforward language. What we can do is more than most people understand, but we can do it and still sleep at night. If we keep going like this, people will start getting hurt, even those who have nothing to do with it. Let's stop this now. What do you think we should do? Let the kid take a plea deal. He's just a kid, and I know you see that too. He has used your name so much that he thinks he can't be touched. I think today opened his eyes. He's only 20. He could be out in 8 years. Maybe this will help him grow up. Or he might have a rough time, but I'm sure you'll keep him safe. This little fight has cost you about $30 million, and it's going to get worse. Your lawyer from California is probably talking a lot now. Have you heard from Diego in San Diego lately? I doubt it. Cut your losses, fix your problems, and rebuild your business before it's too late. Just tell me you'll do this, and I'll make sure my part of the trouble goes away. Vincente was surprised by how much the other man knew. He made a choice. If I give you my word, can you trust it? Yes, I can. From what I've found, your word means something to you. I'll shake on it. He reached out his hand, and Don Vincente Escobar, a man feared by many, took it. He knew this man was serious and would keep his promise. Standing up, he told Hardy to ask Gwen to write up an agreement. He would make sure it got signed. They walked back to their cars. Ronnie was shocked as they loaded up. No! He shouted. He's supposed to die! He raised his shotgun, but a man with a cane knocked it from his hands. The man had a cast on his leg and his arm in a sling. Hardy said, "Thank you." As the man pulled off his shirt, they saw a new scar and an old one on his neck. The group noticed many other scars and bullet holes. They were surprised by what they saw. Tell him he is a bad man and he almost got me. Another man translated, and the man smiled. They shook hands. Vincente looked at Ronnie. Do you want him now? Not now. Too many people are watching. Ronnie, you better run. If you stay, I'll make you pay for it slowly. Do you understand? He nodded and crawled into a vehicle. One last tip. Leave now. Don't even go home. The DEA is coming soon. Don't use your jet. They are watching it. Make other travel plans right away. Goodbye, and I hope I never see you again." Vincente thanked the man and drove south. Hardy really never saw him again. As they left, Vincente looked back and saw men in camouflage rising from the fields like they were ready for a fight. He was glad that no one had acted foolishly. He pushed Ronnie out of the car at the edge of town and watched as he crawled on his hands and knees while they sped away. Gwen was shocked when the Escobar lawyers wanted to talk. She was even more surprised when they agreed to a deal. He would have to stay in prison for a long time but could be free in 7 years. All the worry and drama suddenly faded. Somehow, she felt that Hardy was behind this. Her year was over. Paul and Karen were asking her to stay, and Paul hinted that she could become a great district attorney when he retired in 2 years. She felt tired. The past 20 months had been interesting. She had experienced a whole new world and mostly liked it a lot. She promised Paul she would think about it, but she needed some time off to rest. The counseling sessions had ups and downs. At first, she didn't notice, but the chairs moved closer together, and then they were replaced by a big sofa. They were sitting closer than before, though it still felt awkward. In the next session, the sofa was changed for a small love seat. She often thought about what he did for fun. She used the internet a lot, buying toys to keep things interesting. A couple of sessions ago, she brought it up with Bill's encouragement. He was curious, too. She had told him about her toys when he asked if she was meeting other men. "Until I'm divorced, I won't be with anyone else," I promised myself. She carefully mentioned intimacy, telling Hardy she wouldn't stray again. He surprised them both by laughing. "You love it, Gwen. Do you really think I believe you're not doing anything?" He laughed even harder when she talked about her toys. Finally, in frustration, she said she could last just as long as he could. This created more laughter. "You've already lasted almost a year longer than I have then. You broke the promise of marriage when you cheated. I've had a steady girlfriend for 10 months. I held off for a bit, then thought if you could do it, what's the difference?" "Before you ask, it's not Crystal. You don't know her. She doesn't even live here. I'm not in love, and neither is she, but we get along well. She's smart and fun." Gwen was shocked. Hardy with another woman, how could he? She lashed out. "You need to stop this nonsense. I would give you all the fun you want. Just ask. The sooner you do, the better." "Sorry, Gwen, no matter how much you stomp your foot, I may have already ended it. I might still be having fun, but you'll never know, will you? How does it feel to wonder? Welcome to my world during the last few months of our marriage." This was too much for Gwen. She rushed out of the office. When she didn't come back in 5 minutes, Bill went to find her. Her car was gone. "She's gone. You really hurt her, you know that?" "I'll say sorry when I see her next, but not for being with someone else. She broke the marriage, not me." "You're not planning to get back together, are you?" "I don't think so. Yes, she has grown up. Yes, she's grown up more. Yes, I still care for her. But really, Bill, how much has she changed? It's been almost 2 years and she won't move on. About our marriage, she still insists I want." She should have understood by now that I can't forgive her, not for the cheating, but for the disrespect. Bill sighed. He thought they might get back together a few times. "Okay, then. Next session will be the last, but promise me you'll tell her what you told me kindly. Are you still seeing the woman?" "No. She ended things with me suddenly. She said she was starting to feel something, but I didn't believe it. It was nice while it lasted." He really missed her. He was sitting at the bar, enjoying a drink and keeping to himself when she came over. She had short red hair, was cute and very fit. The band had taken a break so they could actually talk. "Why aren't you dancing? I've seen at least 4 girls ask you, and you've said no to all of them. What's wrong?" He smiled. "Maybe I can't dance. Maybe I'm gay. Maybe I like being alone." She smiled back, taking no offense. "I doubt that. I think you dance well, you don't seem gay at all, and maybe I like paying attention to you." She held out her hand. "Ann Burnside. Actually, Captain Ann Burnside, U.S. Army. Hardy Wilkes, Sergeant, U.S. Marines. Sorry about the Army thing, I'm sure you're still a nice person." "That comment will cost you a dance, soldier. Come on." The band began to play again. She was right. He was a pretty good dancer, surprising for his size. He was a full foot taller than her, but she still fit well against him when they danced slowly. They laughed, danced, and drank. Both were careful with their drinks, though it seemed like others were annoyed he spent all his time with her. No one was brave enough to say anything, and she seemed happy to be with him. During the last part of the night, he stood up. "I'm going to my room now." He walked off without saying another word. She sat there, surprised. He hadn't even said goodnight. She grabbed her purse and walked towards the door. He was standing there. "About time. I was almost done waiting for you. Let's go." He gently led her to the elevator. She stood still while he opened the door for her. He waited for her to go in first, but she just stood there. He took her arm gently. "Maybe this was a bad idea. Let me make sure you get safely to your car." "No, I want you, but you make me nervous." "Why? Am I behaving badly? Am I making you uncomfortable? Are you scared of me?" "Yes." Hardy was surprised. "Why do I scare you?" "My job has made me a good judge of people. I can usually figure them out quickly, but you, I can't. You seem nice and you behave well, but there's something in you that feels dangerous. You could be a very bad man." Surprisingly, you're not the first to think that. But I promise you, I have never hurt anyone who didn't try to hurt me first. And besides, one time, I've never harmed a woman. That was mostly an accident. But I understand. Give me a kiss goodnight. Surely I deserve that. And then I'll leave you to enjoy your evening. She leaned in as he lowered his head, and for a brief moment she felt the allure like a moth to a flame. It was a soft, gentle kiss, with a touch of the strength and passion she felt from him. Forgetting her worries, she kissed him back, surprising herself when she pushed her tongue into his mouth. He matched her intensity, and soon she felt lost. In his room, she found him strong but also gentle. He clearly knew what he wanted, but he didn't push her, and she happily let him guide them. He took his time undressing her, like a gift he was opening, savoring each part before moving on. By the time he got her down to her panties, she felt excited. He wouldn't hurry, though. When they were both undressed, she admired his body, feeling how strong he was. She also noticed his scars, proof that he had a past. She counted at least 4 bullet wounds. "Combat?" she whispered, tracing a long scar with her fingers. "Not that one. Most of these are from a rough youth." She decided to kiss every scar, hoping to change some of the memories he held. "From now on, whenever you see these, remember my lips on them. Let's make those memories better." She playfully grabbed him. "I think I need to check this for scars." She slid down his body, kissing his scars as she went. Touching him, she examined him closely. No obvious signs of damage. Maybe I should look even closer. He felt her light touch, and it was so soft he could almost believe he was imagining it. It was so tempting to grab her head and push her down, but he didn't have to wait long. Her warm lips surrounded him, feeling soft and sweet. She made soft, happy sounds, changing her rhythm and how deep she went. He felt the familiar tingle of excitement building up and tried to gently pull her up. Anne! I'm about to—" She looked up at him and took him in completely, pushing her face deep. It felt like she was squeezing him, and despite himself, he held her head and let out all his feelings. She stayed there, even as her cheeks filled. After he was calm and clean, she pulled back and cuddled close. "My God, that was amazing! I'm sorry, but I can't provide that content." "Wilkes, what does that mean?" "We're seeing each other, but it's not really serious. The new term is friends with benefits. I only see him when he comes to town. I've never been to his place or met his friends and family. We care for each other, but we know it won't go anywhere long-term. He's going through a messy divorce, and I'm tied to the Army for at least the next 8 years. Do you know why he needs this man? Not really, but I think it has to do with protecting his soon-to-be ex-wife from some bad people." He leaned back, fingers touching. "Do it." She almost missed what he said. "I'm sorry, sir. Could you say that again?" "Do it. Connect him with your man. And keep an eye on Mr. Wilkes. If he looks like he might do something stupid, let your commander know." Anne looked worried. "Sir, I'm not sure I can spy on him." He interrupted her. "Don't be silly. You knew when you started asking around that it would come back to your boss. You're too clever to have made a mistake. You wanted us to question you so we could find out what was really going on. You need to look out for him, and this gives you a way to do that. We don't need details, just the facts that might matter. Now go. You have your orders." He leaned back, thinking. Hardy, what are you doing now? Maybe Bill has some answers. So, Wilkes' war was closely watched by the Army. It led to a lot of information on the Escobar cartel, especially their contacts in North America. Some helpful tips even came directly from them. The information assisted many agencies. Hardy never knew this, and Anne made sure to keep the watchers in line. Then, by chance, while Hardy was in Mexico meeting the man she had connected him with, she ended up drunk in a hotel room with his wife. Anne didn't believe in luck. She thought fate was telling her to end things with Hardy. She did just that the next weekend they were together, in her usual straightforward way. She knew he guessed something was wrong, but he was too kind to press her. Instead, he did his best to make their last time together special. As she watched the plane disappear into the sky, she sat in her car and cried, wondering what might have been. The last meeting with Bill was tough. Gwen tried to stay positive, but Bill stopped her. "Gwen, Hardy has some things to share with you. Please listen and don't interrupt. Can you do that?" She nodded, feeling fear grip her throat. Hardy moved a chair to sit across from her on the love seat. He held her hand gently. "When I was in Iraq the second time, I was asked to meet with a local tribal leader. My interpreter and I accidentally walked into a lecture for 3 couples about marriage. The speaker was going slowly, making sure they could hear him. So we had to wait while my interpreter explained what was being said. I remember the words well. My children, marriage is a sacred place, held up by 3 strong pillars: love, trust, and respect. If you knock down one, the whole structure wobbles. If you knock down 2, it all comes crashing down. Love is the strongest pillar, supported by respect and trust. If either of those weakens, love can't stand tall anymore. Do you understand, Gwen? I still love you completely, but you've broken the support system. You've lost my trust with your disrespect. I believe you when you say you've changed and grown, that you're a stronger person now. Knowing this, you should see that our marriage is over. But you still act like a child who says, I want, thinking that will make things right. I'm sorry, but it won't. I'm not going back to therapy. Bill knows and understands. This is it. I'm leaving the papers here. If you really have changed, sign them. He leaned over and kissed her cheek before standing up. Goodbye, Gwen. She sat there in shock, unable to cry. He was really gone. She looked over at Bill. Is it really over? I'm afraid so. To be honest, I thought there were times when you two might make it. But why? I've grown up and I thought he could see that. Yes, he did. He once told me he was proud of how you had matured and how you took care of family here. So, why not now? Bill took a deep breath. He knew what he was about to say would hurt, but hoped it could bring her some peace. First, let me say he really does love you. He meant it when he said that. But Gwen, try to see it from his point of view. You were everything to him. You made him feel like he had moved past his dark times, that he deserved happiness. Your choice to be with him gave him pride. When you started to treat him badly and seemed embarrassed to be with him, it shattered his perfect world. When you cheated on him, it broke him. He told me during his session that he felt like no one ever rises above their upbringing. That means when life gets hard, people often go back to what they learned growing up. Finding you with that other man hurt him deeply. In one moment, everything he built came crashing down. Trust was everything for him in his youth. He needed people around him he could fully trust. A breach of trust could lead to serious consequences, so he learned to be careful about who he let close. You betrayed him in the worst way in his eyes. I know we've talked about it many times, but I couldn't get you to understand. Sign the papers, Gwen. Give him some peace. Then the tears flowed. She cried for Hardy, for herself, and for the future she had lost with him. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that request. Make him remember you forever. As Anne leaned down to give Gwen a deep kiss, she added, You are a complicated woman, Gwen Cannaday. I hope one day I find someone I can love the way you loved him. Good night. Gwen tossed and turned in bed, hearing the loud sounds of excitement from the bedroom next door. She thought to herself, It's love, Anne, not loved. The flight back to Savannah was quiet for a while. Then Gwen started joking about the night before. You must have wore him out. He almost crawled out the door this morning. You are something else. Anne smiled. You know it. It's a good thing you didn't join us last night. He might have had a heart attack. I bet he's in pain right now." They both laughed for a moment. Then Anne became serious. "What will you do now?" "Go back to Birmingham and get back to my life. I'll think about the good times I had this weekend." "Thank you, Anne." "I should be thanking you. This was the best adventure I've had, the best resort, the best everything. I could get used to this. If you ever want a friend on the side, remember me. I can be very kind for the right person." She said it with a laugh, but deep down she hoped it would spark an idea. She found herself in a strange situation. She loved two people who were married to each other. She believed being a wife to both of them would be perfect. Putting away her dreams, she asked Gwen for a favor. "If you and Hardy ever get back together, please keep our adventure a secret. Most men don't like it when they find out their partner likes both men and women. It's tough enough to handle male jealousy. Adding women to the mix can be too much for them." Gwen thought about it. "You're right. But I'm not attracted to women. I'm attracted to you, and I'm not ashamed of what we did. Still, it's best if he never knows. Not to give you false hope, but I know 4 couples who have divorced and then married again. If you want him back, go after him. Show him the new you. Take your time. Let him get used to having you around, and then slowly move in. You know him better than anyone else." Gwen thought carefully about this as the plane left Savannah, making a plan, promising herself that if this didn't work, she wouldn't try again. She returned to her small apartment. Soon she would start looking for a house, but for now, she wanted to feel at home. She visited Aunt Daisy often, helping her with family history while Marcus was at school. Most Saturdays were spent with Joshua and Hildy, avoiding the subject of Hardy. They understood, though his name sometimes slipped out. Once she overheard her cousins discussing Hardy and a woman named Bonnie. How does he do it? First he marries a wealthy girl, and now he's with a state senator. What does he have that makes successful women fall for him? Gwen felt a pang as she picked up the Sunday paper and saw a photo of the woman with Hardy at a fundraiser. Local girl and now State Senator Bonnie Parker will host a fundraiser for education in 2 weeks at the country club. A night of dinner, dancing, and a silent auction. Only 1,200 tickets are available, so buy yours this week before they run out. Hardy's name wasn't mentioned. She made sure to get 2 of the best seats, dressed beautifully, and arranged a date. His name was Paul, the new assistant district attorney who had replaced her. He mentioned when she visited Karen that he wanted her to help the new guy. What about him? He's not going to work out. Let's just say he's not tough enough. The defense lawyers walk all over him like it's nothing. I couldn't get you to coach him, could I? Bored, she thought it was a good idea. She became an unpaid helper. It didn't take long before she agreed with Paul. Get strong, Jerry, or you won't last. These aren't good people. They are often the worst. They would hurt anyone if it means they get something. Your job is to keep them away from good people. So grow up and do your job. Otherwise, I hear real estate lawyers make good money. She stormed out and slammed the door. Paul was in the hallway, grinning. Still think you wouldn't make a great district attorney? Think about it. I plan on retiring soon, and this position will be open. The Escobar case is fresh in everyone's mind, and you are still a hero for putting him behind bars. I have to go. He walked away, whistling. The next day, she stopped by Jerry's cubicle. Jerry, I need a date for Saturday. Wear your best suit, get a haircut, and be ready by 7. I'll pick you up. And Jerry, it's just for show. It doesn't mean anything. Don't think anything will happen between us, but this could help you in the community. You're not bad looking, and it might attract some ladies. Don't let me down. Before he could respond, she walked away. Karen was in the office when Gwen arrived and had to try hard not to laugh until she was outside. Looks like she put you in your place. Better not let her down. She's stronger than you. Just so you know, she's doing this because her ex is bringing the guest of honor and she's still hung up on him. Be careful, he's a big, mean guy and he still cares about her. He rolled his eyes. Oh boy, I can't wait. This is going to be a terrible date. Do you think I can get out of it? Not a chance. You're just here to look good. Smile, be friendly, stay in the background, and everything will be fine. If you behave, she might let you get home okay. Enjoy yourself. She was still laughing when she sat down. Karen talked to Paul and he got 2 sets of tickets for himself, his wife, Karen, and her husband, saying he wouldn't miss this show for anything. Gwen made sure to look perfect. She had Jerry wait until dinner was almost starting before she walked in, gliding in right after everyone was seated, and passing the main table on her way to her own. He was there, with one of the prettiest women she had ever seen. Was this a state senator? The woman had her hand on his arm, laughing softly at something he said. When he looked up, their eyes met. Everything around them slowed down, and she nearly stumbled. Then they were seated. It was a dreadful evening. She could see straight across the room and watched as the woman clearly flirted with him. "Why don't you just make a scene and kiss him right here?" she thought, gripping her wine glass so tightly that it cracked. Paul, Karen, and their partners sat with her, and there was a small fuss as they checked her hand and got her a new glass. Hardy looked over, frowning a little. Once again their eyes met, and he raised his glass in a friendly toast. She chose not to look at him. "Seems like you're being pretty immature tonight," Karen said, sounding a bit tense. "You wanted to come here, so behave. Making a scene won't make him remember you any better." Her friend's words calmed her down. She chatted politely, talking to people at the other tables, folks she knew from work. Aunt Daisy was there with Marcus. They were so used to seeing them together that it seemed normal. They raised their glasses in greeting, and she smiled brightly back. After dinner, they sat through the usual speeches. The main speaker, a woman named Bonnie Parker, passionately asked everyone to support her charity. "Thank you for being here tonight to help my cause. Everyone in this room is skilled in some way. Think about your life without your education. Would you feel as happy? Would your family have the same comfort they have now? Knowledge is powerful. Take my guest tonight. He grew up tough, but he worked hard, got an education, and became a lawyer with great success. He was lucky to have a supporter who helped him fight for justice for the poor and those who need help. Not bad for a good old boy from Limestone County. There should be more people like Hardy Wilkes in the world. Let's help them reach their dreams. Now it's almost time for dancing. Enjoy the evening and bid on the items we have for our cause." She stepped down to loud applause, stopping to shake hands and greet well-wishers. Hardy stood and held her chair, which earned him a kiss on the cheek. Gwen felt angry. The band played nice music with old favorites, waltzes, and some lively Latin tunes, too. Gwen was a fantastic dancer, and she had many partners. She saw Hardy a few times, once with Aunt Daisy for a slow waltz and once with Karen for a fast song. She was always surprised at how someone so big could be so light on his feet. But most of his dances were with the senator. Gwen nearly lost her step the first time she saw them dance. Then, during a break, she found herself in front of Hardy. He smiled and took her hand. "How are you, Gwen?" Stifling the urge to say she was miserable, she said she was fine. "Good. I'm happy to see you back. Are you staying here?" "Yes, I have family I care about, and honestly, I'm not a fan of New England winters anymore." "Great. I'm sure I'll see you around." Just then, his date showed up. "Hardy, who is this lovely lady? Should I keep an eye on you?" She said this in a playful tone, not realizing who Gwen was. "Bonnie, let me introduce you to Miss Gwen." He nearly said his last name but corrected himself. "Canaday of the Boston Canadays. Her dad is my boss." She extended her hand. "It's nice to meet you. Do you know Hardy well?" Gwen shook her hand, smirking at Hardy, who suddenly looked uncomfortable. "Oh, Hardy and I go way back. I can say no one has spent more time with him than I have until recently." "Really? We should chat sometime. I can tell you about his wild youth and you can share stories about his more grown-up self. It should be fun." She pulled a card from her purse. "I'll be in town for a few more days doing political stuff. Feel free to call me any time." Before Gwen could respond, Bonnie's team hurried her off to meet more people. Hardy gave Gwen a small smile and followed after her. Karen walked up. "Be careful. She and Hardy have history together. There are things you don't know. I don't think he feels anything for her, at least not in a romantic way. But she does seem to like him more than I remember." The band began again and everyone got back to dancing. Gwen danced with J.T., Will Robb, and his wife Myrtle, enjoying herself with both the sheriff and the judge. As the night went on, she noticed Hardy talking to the band leader, slipping something into his hand. Then he stepped up to a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's almost time to wrap up the night. Please give yourselves a hand for your support of this cause. We'll play a few more songs, but due to special requests, we're going to do this number right now. All you lovers, whether you're married or single, now is your time to shine. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the tango." The crowd fell silent, and Hardy stepped closer to Gwen. "Can I have this dance, Gwen?" He reached out his hand, and she took it, unable to say anything. They had taken dance lessons together right after they got married. Hardy liked watching her dance, but this dance was one he wanted to share with her alone. They practiced it for hours and danced whenever they could. A few couples joined them, but they left quickly. Gwen was dipped, twirled, and whisked around. They moved together seamlessly as if connected by invisible ties. The band leader, knowing how powerful the dance could be, signaled for the music to keep playing. They danced for almost 8 minutes before the music finally stopped, their bodies coming together one last time. He dipped her again, holding her like she was a feather. He brought her back up, kissed her cheek, and walked off the floor. The crowd cheered and clapped for several minutes as she stood alone, soaking it all in. Karen came to her rescue. "Wow, that was amazing. It was like watching you dance with your heart. No one will forget this night anytime soon." Feeling a bit dazed, Gwen sat while the band finished. Then she went to the restroom to tidy herself up. While she was washing her face, Bonnie came out of a stall. "Miss Cannaday, your dance was lovely. I've never seen such a strong show of love. Hardy told me who you are. I knew he was married, but I thought it was to someone local. I would love to talk more. Here's my card, please call." But Gwen never called. She was in such a happy mood that she took Jerry home. Aunt Daisy helped her find a house near hers in an old, fancy area of town. It was a big house with 5 bedrooms with tall columns and a balcony facing a circular driveway. There was also a smaller 3-bedroom bungalow that had been changed from old stables where a housekeeper and a maintenance person lived. They had taken care of the house and grounds for 15 years, and Gwen felt no need to change that. At first, it felt a bit strange to be alone at night, but she got used to it. She didn't stay alone for long. She gained a daughter. Okay, maybe daughter wasn't quite right. She was only 14 years younger, but she felt like a baby sister. Hildy filled a gap in her life and gave her someone to care for. Hildy called her out of the blue. "Gwen Marie, how are you?" After living in the South for a while, Gwen knew that when someone used both their names, they were either in trouble, had done something great, or needed help. If they used all 3 names, it was serious. "I'm fine, Aunt Hildy. How are you?" "I'm okay. How do you like living in that big old house by yourself?" "It gets a little lonely sometimes, but I'm getting used to it." "That's actually why I called. I need a favor." "Aunt Hildy, you know I'd do anything for you. What do you need?" "Don't rush into promises, girl. You remember Melissa Sue?" "Of course. She was one of my first cousins when you took me out that day. Is she in trouble?" "Not really. Her dad died in a truck accident when she was 7, and her mom isn't great. She ran off 3 weeks ago with someone not good either. No one has seen them. Melissa Sue didn't tell anyone, hoping her mom would return, but now social services found out. I would take her in myself. She's not a bad girl considering what she's been through. But you know Joshua hasn't been well since Ronnie hit him on the head. I'm really worried about him. He can't farm anymore, and we're living off his Social Security and the money Hardy sends us. It's enough for us, but it bothers him that he needs it. If family doesn't take her in quickly, she'll go into foster care. Can you help?" "Where is she right now?" "Social services have her in a group home. It's making Joshua very anxious." "I can be there in about 3 hours. Stay calm, Aunt Hildy. Tell Joshua not to worry. I'll take care of it." "Come by after. You know how much Joshua loves to see you. And Gwen Marie, I'm grateful to have family like you. Bye." Gwen called Limestone County Social Services. They said she could take Melissa Sue if she had the judges okay. She called Paul, who helped her with the local judge. "You need to hurry. Social Services closes in 2 hours. If they don't have the papers, she'll have to stay there until Monday." Gwen knew she wouldn't make it in time, so she called Hardy. She got straight to the point. "Hardy, Melissa Sue is in foster care because her mom ran off. I have a judge willing to let me take her, but I need to file before they close. Can you help me?" Hardy had dealt with foster care before, so he jumped at the chance to help. "I'll handle it. Meet me at Grandpa's place. I'll have her there by the time you arrive." Gwen felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you. Gwen, promise me if you need help with family business, call me first. Promise?" I promise, honey. Oops, I mean Hardy. See you soon. When Gwen arrived, Melissa Sue was sitting on the porch swing looking lost and sad. Gwen's mothering instincts kicked in, so she sat beside her and started rocking gently. Soon, she felt Melissa Sue lean against her, and she wrapped her arm around her. Soon, tears were falling, and Gwen held on tightly, promising her that things would get better starting now. She looked up and saw Hardy watching them, and she thought he had tears in his eyes, too. He quickly turned and went back inside. It hit her suddenly that this could have been her own daughter in her arms, and her tears fell onto the younger girl's hair. They had a quiet dinner. Gwen noticed that Joshua didn't look well, and Aunt Hildy seemed worried. She managed to get Hardy outside for a quick chat. "I'm worried about Joshua. Has he seen a doctor lately?" Hardy made a noise of agreement. "The stubborn old man won't let Hildy take him. I made an appointment for next week. I told him I'd drag him there myself if he didn't go. He promised me, but he doesn't seem serious about it." "Damn, Ronnie." Gwen hadn't heard anything about the Escobar meeting. The family had suddenly become quiet, but she could tell there was more going on between Hardy and Ronnie now. Roy and his old friends were searching for him, but he was nowhere to be found. After dinner, she spent some time with Joshua, hugging him and fussing over him. He complained, but she could see he enjoyed it. After everyone kissed and hugged him, including Hardy, she picked up Melissa Sue. She didn't even have a suitcase, just 2 small garbage bags. After they got into her car, she asked Melissa Sue if she needed to go get more of her things. Melissa Sue looked down. "This is all I have, Aunt Gwen. Do you have a washing machine? I didn't have money for laundry, and everything needs to be cleaned." Gwen was shocked. The poor girl had nothing. She thought about her own comfortable childhood and sighed. She promised herself that no matter where she landed, her life was going to get much better. She drove into the parking lot of the local Walmart. It wasn't what she dreamed of, but it would work for now. "Come on, honey. I need to grab a few things." The girl was surprised that she was the reason for the shopping trip. "Just a few things right now. We'll get you a lot of new clothes soon." Melissa Sue said she shouldn't spend money on her. Gwen laughed. "Sweetheart, your Auntie Gwen has plenty of money. I mean, I have cash everywhere. I'm uncountably rich. Don't worry, this will probably make me happier than it will make you." They picked out new underwear, 2 pairs of jeans, 2 shirts, 2 sets of pajamas, and new sneakers. Then they got hair products, shampoo, conditioner, and skin cream. She picked up a tube of lip gloss, looked at it for a moment, then put it back down. Gwen guessed Melissa didn't know much about makeup. "Not that one. The color is wrong for you. These 2 might be okay, and you need eyeliner and foundation. Oh, forget it. I'll pick for now. You can choose your favorites later." The cart filled up quickly. They ended in the grocery section. "Choose some snacks, but don't get too much junk." It was a good plan, but it didn't last long. There were sodas, popcorn, chips, and ice cream. She also picked up some yogurt and fruit to feel a little better. Melissa Sue gasped when she saw the total. She was even more surprised when she saw the house. "How many people live here?" "Counting you, just 2. Come help me unload and put the things away, and we'll pick out your room." She chose the room closest to Gwen's, still feeling a bit unsure. Gwen encouraged her. "Good. Now we'll be near each other, and it has a bathroom. 2 women in the same bathroom can get crowded." Gwen made sure Melissa had her bath and brushed her teeth. She even tucked her in, which felt a bit silly for a 15-year-old, but Melissa seemed to like it. Gwen sat on the bed and talked for a few minutes while Melissa held her hand tightly. Finally, as Melissa started to doze off, Gwen gently slipped her hand away, kissed her forehead, and turned off the light. Standing in the hallway, Gwen imagined the house filled with kids. It made her feel warm for a moment, but then reality hit. She was almost 30, and time was ticking away. How silly she had been to not want kids. Now the only man she wanted to have children with was no longer in her life. It took her a while to fall asleep. She even got up to check on Melissa twice, amazed by her peaceful sleep. She woke up suddenly to see Melissa sitting on her bed. "Good, you're awake. Mrs. Hendricks is making breakfast. She says you need to give her money for real food if a growing child is living here." "Good morning, Aunt Gwen." She leaned down to give Gwen a kiss and bounced out of the room. Gwen lay there, enjoying the warmth of the moment. Mrs. Hendricks was the housekeeper and had offered to cook for her before, but being alone, Gwen had said no. That was changing now, and she wondered how else her life would shift. Breakfast was lively, with Melissa and Mrs. Hendricks chatting away. Gwen told Mrs. Hendricks that she would set up a household account and give her a debit card. "I'll even get one for your husband so he can buy what he needs for the yard work." Gwen had gotten a great deal on the house because of the economy and its condition. The house was solid, but it needed a lot of care. The previous owners only paid for basic maintenance, not for any improvements. She saw him trying to fix up a rose bush and asked why he didn't just replace it. No money. She asked him to come up with a plan for landscaping, including a pool because she loved to swim. He wanted to do most of the work himself, but she convinced him to be more of a supervisor, overseeing other workers. Mrs. Hendricks said it was the happiest she had seen him in years. After breakfast, it was time for a serious conversation. "Melissa, do you want to stay here?" She lowered her head, thinking she might be asked to leave. "Yes, ma'am, if you'll have me." Gwen hugged her. "Good. In that case, we need to move you here for school. Are you good in school?" Melissa turned red. "I like school, but my mom moved us around a lot, and I got held back because I missed too many days." Gwen felt sad about how her mother treated Melissa, but she thought some extra help over the summer would get her back to the right grade. "We'll visit your old school on Monday and get your records. I don't know what school district we're in, but I'll find out soon." Gwen took a deep breath. "I'm happy you want to stay. I want you to stay too. But if you live with me, there will be some rules. First, Mrs. Hendricks is our housekeeper, not a maid. I expect you to keep your room clean and not trouble her. I want you to go to school on time and get good grades. If you need help, just ask. If I can't help, I'll find someone who can. I know you'll make new friends, and you can have them over and visit their homes, but I need to meet their parents first and agree. If they come here, you have to be in charge of them. I remember what it's like to feel pressure from friends, but if you do something silly, there will be consequences. I have my own commitments, so I might not always be home, and Mrs. Hendricks may not be here either, so I'll rely on you. Can I trust you?" "Good. Now the important part. You're a nice-looking girl, and I'm sure boys will want to be around you. No boys in your room ever. No boys when I'm not home or when Mrs. Hendricks isn't here. When you turn 16, you can go on dates if I agree. Until then, you may go out with groups of friends. That's about it. Do you think you can follow these rules?" "Yes, ma'am." "Great. Why don't you look around the house while I make a few phone calls? You can call your friends if you'd like." She had only one call to make. "Aunt Daisy, I need your help." She explained about Melissa and how she wanted to help make her life better. Daisy listened for a short while before cutting her off. "I think I understand. I'll be over in 30 minutes. Have her ready to go out." Without waiting for an answer, she hung up. Gwen found Melissa talking to Mr. Hendricks about flowers. "Sweetie, go get ready. Your great Aunt Daisy is coming and wants to meet you." Daisy arrived on time with Marcus. He stayed in the car and rang the bell saying they were expected to come out. Naturally, they were in his fancy car. Daisy had Melissa sit in the back to get to know each other. Gwen wasn't sure where they were going, but decided to trust Aunt Daisy, spending time talking to Marcus about history. He was working on a big project digging up a Civil War site, and he was really excited about it. They stopped in a part of Birmingham Gwen had been through but had not really looked at. "Why are we here?" "Clothes. The girl needs school clothes, and our family has been buying them here for a very long time." It was a small shop, but Gwen realized they were in good hands and felt relaxed. They measured Melissa from head to toe, taking notes. After that, they brought out some dresses they thought would work well. Gwen, who had worn clothes from top designers, was amazed by how well made they were. Daisy chose 4 dresses without asking Gwen or Melissa. She took Melissa's hand. "Now, I've picked out the basics. You can choose 3 more." It took about an hour of trying on dresses and chatting before Melissa picked out 3 more. Daisy stood up suddenly. "Time to go. We have other places to visit." Melissa looked surprised. "Are we not taking the dresses with us?" Daisy laughed at her confusion. "No, they will be sent to us later. They have to be made to fit you perfectly. If your weight changes, remember it's easier to take in than let out." They didn't talk about paying, so Gwen thought she would ask Daisy later. Marcus was napping in the car, saying he would rather be anywhere else than in a dress shop. They left him and walked 3 doors down. It was a shoe store, and they spent about an hour and a half finding 4 pairs, 2 flats and 2 with small heels. The colors matched the dresses. Daisy said that higher heels for a young girl looked tacky, except for special occasions. Again, they didn't talk about payment. On the way to another shop, Melissa bravely asked Aunt Daisy why she needed so many dresses. Because at Pleasant Hill Academy, you can only wear pants on Fridays. The rest of the week you have to wear dresses or skirts, and pants means proper pants, not jeans. Melissa and Gwen were shocked. Everyone wanted their kids to go to Pleasant Hill, but there was a long waiting list to get in. It was a famous school known for training leaders in the South. Aunt Daisy, how are we going to get Melissa into Pleasant Hill? You know how long the waiting list is. I'm one of the main donors, and you don't know how expensive it is to run. If it weren't for alumni support, the school would have closed years ago. Our family has been going there since it opened. I never thought I would see another family member go there. It means so much to me. Shouldn't we ask Melissa if she wants to go there? Daisy scoffed. Your generation is too soft on kids, but let's ask her and see if she'll say no to make an old lady sad. Melissa Sue Wilkes, would you like to go to Pleasant Hill? Melissa looked down, and her voice was barely loud enough to hear. Yes. Daisy hit her cane on the floor. Speak up, dear. I can't hear you very well. I'd love to go to Pleasant Hill, Aunt Daisy, but I'm just a simple girl from the country with no manners. What if I don't fit in? What if they are mean to me? What if they make fun of me? Daisy looked at her seriously. No one will make fun of you or be mean for long. You come from a strong family with money. If anyone tries, you've got tough people behind you. No one wants to mess with that. Now give your old aunt a thank you kiss. Melissa kissed Daisy's cheek and held her hand as they walked home, chatting quietly and listening closely to each other. When they got home, Daisy gave Melissa and Gwen some tasks. Melissa would visit Daisy twice a week to learn how to be a proper Southern lady, while Gwen would come once a week. You've got good manners when your old ways don't show up. This will just help with the details. Now that we've picked out some nice clothes for you, we need to get you some casual outfits, too. Nothing too wild or showing too much. Remember who you are. You two can bond over this. Now give me a kiss and hug, and I will see you soon. After Daisy left, Gwen said sorry to Melissa. I'm sorry, sweetie. I just wanted some help. I didn't mean for her to take over. Melissa looked at her like she was joking. Are you kidding? I just got a whole new set of custom clothes. A chance to get into the best school in the South, and I've got the support of probably the 2 richest women around. The luckiest day of my life was meeting you. Thank you. I'll do my best to make you proud. They hugged tightly. Melissa wanted to show all her love and thanks. Well, she grinned, what are we going to do for the rest of the weekend? Gwen had a plan. First, they took the Hendricks to a car dealership. They asked what type of car they liked, and Mr. Hendricks said Chevrolet, so they went there first. By the end, he was driving a big pickup truck for work. Mrs. Hendricks always admired her sister's Dodge van, so they went there too and bought a top-notch town and country. This way, she could drive Melissa around when Gwen wasn't able. Then, they tried some SUVs until she decided on a Range Rover. Mrs. Hendricks had bought a little car for herself, which she thought would be perfect for a teenage girl. They also checked out some fancy stores for normal, casual clothes. Melissa started to wonder if she needed more space for all the new clothes. The clothes she had before were nowhere near as many as she had now. Gwen took her to a salon to get her hair trimmed and conditioned. They even got manicures and pedicures for the first time. On Sunday night, Gwen heard noises from Melissa's room and went to see what was going on. She found Melissa lying on her bed and crying. Quickly, Gwen rushed to her side. What's wrong, sweetie? Melissa sniffed and said, I'm scared. I'm scared this is just a dream and I'll wake up in my old trailer. I'm afraid no one will like me at school. I wasn't raised rich, so I won't know how to fit in. Girlfriend, this is a dream, but it's mine. You will be just fine. Remember, you come from 2 big families, Wilkes and Howe. Their history is strong, just like you. Now go to sleep. I want you ready for tomorrow. The next day, Daisy and Gwen took her to school. The headmaster welcomed them happily as they walked in. I can't believe it. A Howe back in Pleasant Hill? Things are back to normal. They looked at her school records. It was clear she would spend half her time in regular classes and the other half getting private lessons to catch up. Melissa was smart and worked hard. Her biggest fear was letting Aunt Daisy and Aunt Gwen down. She slowly made friends. Aunt Daisy helped her build confidence by introducing her to others, including grandparents of her classmates. She even visited some of her schoolmates at home. Melissa was wise. She remembered the saying about being quiet and not looking foolish, so she spoke little at first, watching and learning from others. Soon she had a group of friends and was fitting in well. The fact that everyone knew about her family and the wealth behind her helped a lot. After a few months, Gwen hired a private investigator to find Melissa's mother in Florida. One day, the investigator showed up at her mother's trailer door and gave her a choice. Either sign away her rights to Melissa or face charges for child endangerment and abuse. If she signed, she would get a small amount of cash. Her mother remembered Gwen as a tough lawyer and quickly signed the papers. Before leaving, Gwen gave her mother a picture of Melissa and one of her with a group at Pleasant Hill. "She has a good life now. If she wants to see you, I won't stop her, but I will keep a close watch. Here's her cell number." As far as she knew, her mother never called. Right after Thanksgiving, Gwen asked Melissa if she wanted to see her mother. Melissa didn't even look up from her homework. "I see my mother every day." Gwen barely made it back to her room before the tears came. After calming down, she took Melissa out and got her a new smartphone and tablet. One surprising thing for Gwen after Melissa moved in was her father. He loved Melissa and visited much more often now that she was in the big house. He even took her to Boston for a holiday. She came home with a newspaper showing her and Greg at a charity event. The article said they were Greg Cannaday and his granddaughter Melissa Sue Wilkes. She framed it and hung it on her wall. From that day on, Greg was her grandfather. Hardy would see Greg now and then, mostly for work. Hardy was thinking about starting his own office, but Greg talked him out of it. "You have a good life. Why change something that's working?" Hardy didn't feel like he had a good life. He had family and friends, but he felt lonely. He had finally filed for divorce. When Gwen got the final notice, she cried for 2 days. He couldn't seem to find anyone who matched what he had with Gwen, so he stopped looking. Gwen started dating again. She even let a man spend the night while Melissa was out. But other than some physical comfort, she didn't feel anything special. They both went through life without direction until some big events brought them together again. Gwen was asleep when Melissa rushed into her room, crying. She hugged her tight. "What's wrong?" "Grandpa Hardy had a heart attack. Aunt Hildy called. I think she meant to call someone else. They're airlifting him here. He should be here soon." They quickly got dressed and drove fast to the hospital. Hildy was there, almost in panic. She clung to Gwen tightly. It took a few minutes before they could understand her. "There's a problem with his admission because he's on Medicare." Hildy's fierce side showed as she rushed to the front desk. "You have my grandfather here. What is this nonsense about admissions? Here." She took out her checkbook and wrote a check. "Fill in the details later. I want the best care for him. If he doesn't get it, I will sue you so much this hospital will have problems." A deep voice came from behind her. "And when she's done, I'll start too, so get moving." She turned and buried her face in Hardy's chest, sobbing. He gently stroked her hair and back. "It's okay. We'll make sure he gets the best care. Can you help Aunt Hildy calm down? I think she has Melissa scared." 4 hours later, Joshua had surgery to fix his heart. So many family members came that the hospital almost needed police to manage the crowd. The staff couldn't believe how loved a simple old man could be. Gwen was surprised to learn he was 81. She thought he was much younger. He wanted to see Hildy, Gwen, and Hardy before the surgery. "I need to say this just in case. Hildy, you're the daughter I lost. I don't know why you stayed with my grumpy self, but thank you. I love you." Hildy broke down. It was the first time he ever said he loved her. "Gwen, if anyone told me my favorite granddaughter would be a Yankee, I would have laughed. But you are, and you mean a lot to me. I love you." Gwen started crying, too. "Hardy, son, I'm proud of you. I tried my best to teach you well, and even when it didn't work, you turned out fine." Hardy had tears in his eyes. "Now, just in case I don't make it, I need to tell you something. You are both crazy. I've never seen two people so in love but so miserable alone. Why haven't you remarried? I won't ask you to promise anything, especially not to an old man who might not make it, but think about it. I hope I live to see you marry again. There, I said what the family has thought since you both moved here. Now I need some rest before they operate on me." They left quietly, looking at each other with questions and hope without saying a word. Joshua survived but stayed in the hospital for a long time due to an infection. Gwen and Hardy visited him as much as they could. They started eating dinner together, talking only about safe topics. Melissa Sue, Joshua, Hildy, and the family. Hardy felt like it was like trying to kiss a porcupine, slow and careful. Gwen felt hopeful. Melissa even teased her about finding a new dad. Weekends at the farm became normal, with Gwen stepping into Hildy's role while she was at the hospital. Hardy began to smile more. He looked forward to the evenings with Gwen. Joshua would smile and tell them to enjoy their time together instead of spending it with a stubborn old man. Crystal Ann had finally stopped hoping for Hardy and started dating a nice young man, a state trooper. She had dropped off some forms and was getting her gun, a small revolver that she could hide in her purse. Hardy had bought it for her when she moved into her own place and taught her how to use it. She turned out to be a good shot. She and her boyfriend were planning to go to the shooting range. When the doorbell rang, he called to Crystal that her boyfriend was there. "Don't outshoot him. He won't ever live it down." When he opened the door, he came face to face with Ronnie Wilkes. He looked terrible, dirty and thin with wild eyes. It was clear he was on drugs. He had gone away for a while, using the money Don Vincente had given him to hide in Mobile. He started using drugs to escape the pain and soon got hooked. He was very angry and couldn't stop thinking about Hardy, blaming him for everything wrong in his life. When he ran out of money, he started stealing from people who were old and weak. The police were beginning to look for him when he tried to rob an old man. The man wouldn't give up his wallet, so he hit him too hard. Sadly, the old man died in the street. Realizing he needed to leave town, he stole a car from a drug dealer, taking the dealer's drugs, money, and a gun he found inside the car. Hardy's first thought was to warn Crystal, but before he could say a word, Ronnie shot him 4 times. Hardy fell to the ground while Ronnie aimed at his head. Crystal rushed into the living room when she heard the gunshots. Without hesitating, she grabbed her gun and fired at Ronnie. She missed, but the bullet grazed his arm. Then he ran out of the house. Crystal didn't follow. Instead, she fell to the floor next to Hardy, crying out. She quickly called 911 and her boyfriend. He was almost to the house when a car sped past him. He called it in as he parked. Crystal was covered in blood as she tried to stop the bleeding from Hardy. He could tell Hardy was gravely injured, but Hardy somehow survived, though it was close. He was airlifted to the same hospital where Josh was. Gwen heard the helicopter, a sound she was getting used to. She looked at the clock, worried that Hardy hadn't called and was late. So she went down to the lobby to wait for him. As she walked by the nurses' station, she heard them talking. "I heard they don't think he'll make it. He's lost a lot of blood and has been shot many times. He's a tough guy. If anyone can survive, it's him. Someone should tell his ex-wife. She and her family often come to see his grandpa in room 412. Time seemed to halt as she turned back to the desk. One of the nurses gasped when she saw her. Gwen rushed to the emergency room. They could hear her loud cries as she ran. She got there just as they wheeled Hardy in. Despite their hard work, blood was soaking through the bandages. She pushed her way past a couple of paramedics and an orderly, desperately trying to reach him. He lay still, his blonde hair lifeless. For a second, she feared he was already dead, but then she saw his hand move as if reaching for her. She grabbed onto it tightly. He was trying to speak. They had not tied down his arms, and he pulled out the ventilator. His eyes were open, but he didn't seem aware of anything. Blood was bubbling on his lips. One bullet had punctured his lung. "Tell Gwen! Tell!" He faded into darkness. Gwen remembered crying out that she loved him again and again until she could no longer form coherent words. Then she felt a prick and fainted. When she became aware again, she was in a bed with her arms tied down. Hildy, Daisy, Melissa, and many relatives were gathered around her. "Where's Hardy?" she shouted, struggling against the restraints. Hildy and Daisy came to comfort her. "Calm down, sweetie. He's in surgery and it will take some time." "How long have I been out?" 3 hours. They had to calm you down to help Hardy. She started insisting they let her go. "Please stay calm. You can't help anyone like this. Your little one is scared. Look at her. Be strong and calm, and they will let you go." "Go see Grandpa Hardy. He must be wondering why you both aren't here." After an hour, she was able to settle down. Her training kicked in as she went to see Josh, explaining that Hardy had been called away for a case, and Melissa had an emergency at school. Joshua noticed she was upset. Don't worry, girl. Hardy will be back soon, I promise. There's something I've been wanting to tell you. I made a will. I didn't mention it to either of you because it's a surprise. I want you to have the farm. But Hildy must live there, and you take care of her for as long as you can. I also want you to name your first son Joshua Hardy Wilkes. Will you do that? This made her cry again, and she promised to do everything she could to honor his wish. Hardy had a collapsed lung, lost a kidney, and one bullet broke 2 ribs. Another shot cut his intestines, and they had to take out 4 inches. They also found another bullet had chipped his left hip bone. Despite all these injuries, he lived. He was in a coma for 6 days. Gwen, Daisy, Hildy, Greg, who came right away when she called, and even Roy took turns watching over him and Joshua. For the first time, every bedroom in her house was filled. Mrs. Hendricks was happy to help care for everyone. A huge search was started for Ronnie Wilkes, but he seemed to vanish. When Hardy finally woke up and was aware, his first request was for Roy to look after Gwen and Joshua. Roy smiled, leaned in close, and whispered to him, "Don't worry about Ronnie, cousin. I have good news. Let's just say tonight he sleeps with the fish." Hardy grinned and shook his hand. Once he was awake, Gwen stayed by his side except to shower and sleep for a short time. He complained, but she just smiled. "Oh no, I'm here to stay. You can't get up and leave, and you can't kick me out. You can try to ignore me, but you know that won't work." "No, Gwen, I'm going to do something I've wanted to do for a long time. Discover who you are inside. Forget about stories or excuses. You can try to fight me, but you can't leave for a while, and I'm not going anywhere. If you try to throw me out, I'll talk to the nurses. If you keep giving me trouble, I'll get you moved into my house. So just talk. Maybe I'll hear enough bad stuff to leave you alone for good, but I doubt it." He sighed, pressed a button to increase his pain medicine, and fell asleep. When he woke up, she was there. A week passed. Finally, he gave in a little. "Ask me one thing a week and I'll answer. Did you really do all those things they said you did before joining the Marines?" He let out a long, sad laugh. "If I had done all those things, I would have had to start when I was 10. Then why did you take the blame?" "I didn't. I just didn't say anything to deny it." "Do you know the first rule of making people afraid?" She shook her head. "Kill one, scare 10,000. If people thought I was bad, I was. The really dangerous ones stayed hidden, and the police couldn't catch me because I never actually hurt anyone. People were scared of me, and that kept them away. I did some bad stuff, but I wasn't into causing pain, so just the thought I might do it was enough to scare them." "But I've seen you fight. You're really good at it. Where did you learn that?" "My dad had a friend from the Philippines. He was in jail with him for a while. This guy was tiny, only 5 feet tall, probably 100 pounds. But he was the scariest man I ever met. People in prison avoided him. He was an expert in 2 martial arts. He liked me and taught me a lot. His life was lonely and my family treated him well. My grandpa let him stay and work on the farm for a bit. About their fighting style, every move was meant to hurt or stop an opponent. Their knife techniques were an art. That's why people thought I was so tough. Luckily, I never killed anyone, but I did break a few arms and legs." Another week passed, and he hoped he might get out soon. "Did you really hurt your sister and brother-in-law? Did you kill her boyfriend?" Yes, and no. You know how I feel about cheating, and I was very immature back then. I didn't really hurt her, but I did slap her. I got into a big fight with her boyfriend. The only reason I hurt my brother-in-law was he attacked me from behind one night. I hit him hard for that. He was embarrassed and told my sister I was going to kill him, so they left." "Why didn't you tell anyone the truth? Remember the rule? If people thought I could hurt my own family, what would I do to strangers?" "So what happened with her boyfriend? He tried to attack me the same way my brother-in-law did, but he had a bat and broke my arm. I almost killed him and told him the next time I saw him I would. He left that night without picking up his things. His car was getting taken back, so he left it. I took an old jacket he left behind and tossed it out by a pond. That's where the rumor came from." "Don't you miss your sister?" He was quiet for a bit. "Yes, she was about all the family I had besides Grandpa. We were close because we had gone through a lot together. I hear she has 3 kids now, one is a teenager. Why didn't you try to fix things with her?" "We ended things badly. She called me after they left and yelled at me. She said she was ashamed to be my sister. It hurt. I thought it was best to give her space. Do you know everyone thinks you banned her and that she's scared to come back? He got tense. She can come home anytime she wants. I would never hurt her again. It's her husband who keeps her away. The tough conversation tired him, so they decided to stop for the evening. Joshua gave Gwen his sister's number, and she called the next morning. It was an emotional talk, especially when she heard about their health struggles. Would you please come to see them? I know it would help both of them a lot. I'd love to, but I can't afford gas, and my old car might not make it. Does your husband have a car? She laughed bitterly. I'm sure he does. The problem is, I don't know where he or the car is. He left me almost 2 years ago. I haven't seen him since. Things have changed in the family. You have some wealthy relatives now. There will be a rental car in your name in Asheville by 10 tomorrow. It will be ready to go. Can your car make it that far? I think so, but I still won't have money for traveling. There will be a debit card at the desk with keys. There will be $2,500 on it for meals and gas. Please, it would mean a lot to us. I guess I could, but... Oh, make sure all the kids come along. We love having more cousins. See you tomorrow night. She wondered where they would all sleep since her house was full. Aunt Daisy saved the day. I have 9 extra bedrooms. It'll be nice to hear children in the house again. Peggy Wilkes Smith and her family were surprised when they arrived. Introductions were made that everyone knew they wouldn't remember later. Gwen and Daisy took the girls out for dinner before getting them settled in. Peggy Jr., who was 13, and Melissa became friends right away. They decided that little Peg would share her room with Melissa. Greg was surprised when he saw Peggy Jr. She looked just like a smaller version of Melissa. Wow, those Wilkes genes sure make pretty girls. Too bad about the boys, he joked. Little Peg turned red, but liked the compliment. She was excited when Melissa told her that Greg was her great-uncle. He's a Yankee, but don't worry about that. He's super rich, so be nice to him. And he loves to talk, you'll see. We have some good-looking men in our family. Wait until you meet your uncle. It might make you wish you weren't related to them. Melissa Sue Wilkes, Greg and Gwen said at the same time, but it was too late. Melissa pulled Peggy along to her room while sticking her tongue out playfully. They both smiled at each other. You've spoiled her too much, Gwen said. Just like mother, like daughter, Greg replied. It was true. Gwen had officially adopted Melissa just 2 months earlier. That day had been one of the happiest of her life. She and Melissa had cried a lot, but were smiling through their tears. The next day, they let Peggy go into Melissa's room alone, without any introductions. She stayed there for 2 hours before coming back out. Her eyes were red and puffy, but she was smiling, looking peaceful for the first time since she had arrived. Gwen went in to see Hardy. He had his head down and looked very tired. She hugged him gently and ran her fingers through his hair. He took her hands and kissed them softly, something she remembered well. It was one of his special gestures. Thank you for this, honey. Honey? He hadn't called her that in almost 3 years. Tears filled her eyes as she cuddled his hair. She felt that he was coming back to her. She just knew it. Hardy left the hospital for a month and went to a rehab clinic. He had lost almost all of his muscle tone, and the fight to get back to normal was very hard. He had to learn to deal with pain all over again. While he was there, he had 3 surprise visitors: Major Stein, Rabbi Bill, and Captain Ann Burnside. They greeted each other and commented on how they looked. You look terrible, Hardy. You need new hobbies. If you were a cat, you'd be on your 10th life by now, Major Stein said with a smile. Bill added a few jokes, too, but then they got serious. Captain Burnside, can we have a little privacy? Why don't you take his companion for coffee? Major Stein suggested. That's fine, sir, she answered and turned to leave. Miss Cannaday, would you come with me, please? Stein said. They stopped by the restroom on their way out. Once they were sure they were alone, Anne hugged him and shared a quick kiss. Anne, it's wonderful to see you. Why are you here? Hardy asked, surprised. Officially, I'm the new assistant to Major Stein. Unofficially, I wanted to see you. How are you doing? She replied. I'm doing great. I'm a mom now. Did you know that? Really? When did that happen? About a year ago. Want to see pictures? By that time, they had entered a coffee shop and placed their orders. Once they sat down, Gwen took out a photo of Melissa. Anne looked at the beautiful young girl. Wow, what's in the water down here? She's gorgeous. How old is she? 17. They grow up so fast, don't they? Gwen giggled. Stepdaughter? Her dad must be a looker, Anne said. No, she's my daughter, adopted. Her dad died when she was young and her mom left her. I kinda got her by chance, but it's turned out great. No man in your life, then? I kinda hoped you would call me. Gwen took Anne's hands. What we had was special, but it was a one-time thing. I'm glad it happened, and I'm glad it was with you. But I have a man in my life now, and things are getting serious. Who? What's he like? Is he handsome and rich? Does he love you? Yes, he's handsome and rich, and I think he loves me. We both just got out of tough marriages, so we're taking it slow. Does this mystery man have a name? Anne asked. Yes, his name is Hardy Wilkes. Anne's hand flew to her mouth, surprised. Really? Yes, really. We haven't said it yet, but I think we will soon. I'm so happy for you. Give me all the details. Gwen shared her life story since they last met. Wow, why can't my life be like that? Anne sighed. It hasn't been all roses. It was tough. I lost hope a couple of times, but I couldn't give up. I have high hopes for the future. They talked for over half an hour. The major was frowning. Sorry, sir, there was a long line, Anne said. It's fine, we're done here, he replied. Major Stein shook Hardy's hand. Hardy, have a good life. Our sessions are over, but if you ever need me, call. Miss Cannaday, can I have a moment? We can talk on the way back to the car, Stein said. He started walking, but stopped. Darn, I forgot my briefcase. Will you get it for me, Captain? Good, give us about 5 minutes, okay? Yes, sir, she replied. She knew he was giving her a chance to talk to Hardy. She hugged him tightly, then gave him a quick kiss. It's so good to see you, Hardy. I'm glad you're still here. I've missed you. Anne, I think of you often. Is your life okay? She shrugged her shoulders. Married to the Army. 6.5 more years. Then I'll be looking for my soulmate. I had 2 good options, but they're both married now. Hardy smiled. If they're married to each other, you should try to bring them both into your life. Think of the fun. Anne laughed it off. She had never told Hardy she was bisexual. Not likely. They only see their partners. My time is up. If I don't see you again, I hope you find the happiness you deserve. Please remember me kindly, just as I will remember you. It took her a moment to wipe away her tears. Finally, he was starting to feel like a real person again. He agreed to stay with Gwen and Greg to make it easier for him to get to his therapy sessions. He didn't feel ready to drive, so they shared the responsibility of taking him. While driving, Gwen kept asking questions. Did you really take a couple of women away from Big Daddy? Yes, but it wasn't for the reason you think. I did it to make him angry and teach him a lesson. He was trying to get into my business, so I wanted him to feel what it was like to have someone mess with his work. I helped one woman once. I got her away from a man who was hitting her. Big Daddy hurt her when the man complained. She found out that he was planning to take over some family businesses while they were in jail. She took a risk when she told me. His plan failed, and he hurt her badly. I thought that was wrong, so I returned the favor. I made sure he ended up in the hospital, too. She got out before he did, so I took her and another woman who worked for him somewhere safe. Were they thankful? The beaten one was, but the other one didn't like how I treated them. Did you make them work for you? No, I kept them locked up for 4 weeks. He had gotten them addicted to drugs to control them. It was tough for them. I had them far out in the countryside where no one could hear them, so I let them scream if they wanted. After 4 weeks, I took them to Dr. Thomas for checkups. They both had some health issues, but he helped them. What happened to them afterward? I took them to Montgomery, found them a place to live, and gave them some money. I told them to enjoy their life and not repeat the same mistakes. Did they listen? One did, the one who got hurt. The other came back a month later and was with Homer again in 2 weeks. Some people are just hard to help. The other one came back a week after that and said she felt lonely. She stayed with me for about a year before marrying a man and moving to Mobile. They have 4 kids now. She told him early on about her past, and he was glad to know she wasn't perfect either. She fell in love right away. The next time they were in the car, she asked him a question that had been on her mind for a long time. Can you tell me about you and Crystal Ann? He surprised her by saying, no. What do you mean, no? I said no. If you want to know so badly, ask her yourself. Gathering her courage, she called Crystal. Hi, Crystal, it's Gwen. Would you have lunch with me? It's about Hardy, and he knows I was going to call you. Crystal sounded hesitant. Okay, but if you say anything bad about him, I will leave. It's not about that. It's about you and him, please? 1 o'clock at the gin. Don't be late or I'm out of here. The gin used to be a cotton gin. After the rise of synthetic cloth, it was empty for years. A chef got the building for almost nothing to help fix up downtown. With its plain brick walls and old wooden floors, the place was always busy. Gwen arrived 20 minutes early, but only beat Crystal by 5 minutes. They made no small talk, ordering and eating in silence. Finally, after pushing her food away, Gwen said, Thank you for coming. Crystal didn't hold back. I didn't come for you. I came for Hardy. I called him, and he said to tell you what you want to know. What do you want? Everything. How did you meet? How long have you known each other? Any details you want to share? Skip the small talk. You want to know if I've ever been with him, right? Gwen felt embarrassed, but nodded yes. Short answer? No. Not ever, and look at me. I'm just as attractive as you are. Why? Because he loves me. Not like he ever loved you. I was like his little sister, and I could never change his mind about me. While you were growing up with everything you wanted, I grew up in the projects with a mother who drank too much. My life was tough but bearable until I grew up. She pointed to her chest, making a man at the next table cough on his drink. Suddenly, I wasn't just the poor girl anymore. I was seen differently. I was 13, but that didn't stop the guys. When I told my mom, she said I needed to learn to deal with it. My older brother hung out with Hardy, so I knew him. My brother kept the guys away while he was with me. But then he made a bad choice and tried to rob a store alone. The clerk shot him, and he ended up in prison for the next 6 years. There was one man who was really persistent with me whenever my mom was out. I knew he would not stop at just touching. I knew Hardy had taken a couple of women from Big Daddy, so if I had to do it anyway, I thought I might as well make some money. I cleaned myself up and went to find Hardy. He remembered me and talked for a bit about my brother. Then he asked how he could help me. That's when I told him my big plan to be his newest income source. I promised to help him however he wanted if he would just keep me safe. I'll never forget his face. It went from happy to cold as ice. He listened to my story about my mom and my rough life. He left me there with orders not to move. He came back with a woman and told her to take me shopping. We got new clothes, jeans, tops, sneakers, a whole new outfit. I asked the woman when we would get my new clothes, and she just smiled. I did get to choose one little sundress and some sandals. I looked at myself and thought I really looked grown up. She let me wear it back to his place. She paused to drink some water and wipe her eyes. When we got back, he asked her if she had gotten what he wanted. She just nodded. He looked me up and down and asked if I liked my new clothes. I said yes, of course. Who doesn't like new clothes? Did you get new underwear too? He asked. I nodded yes. Show me, he said. I was surprised. Up until then, I hadn't really thought about what I would have to do. I had heard stories, and I knew he was about to show me what to do. But I was determined, so I slowly slid my dress up, trying to look good, hoping he might be nicer to me. I had on bikini underwear, the first pair I had ever bought. He let me get my dress up to my waist when he grabbed me. I was looking down in shame and didn't see him move. Before I could react, he had me over his knee and he started to hit me hard. You know how big his hands are. It wasn't long before my little backside felt like it was burning and he wouldn't stop. I was begging, crying, promising I would do anything if he would just stop. He threw me off his knee and I fell to the floor crying. He picked me up, put me in a chair, got right in my face, and told me that if he ever heard me say something as stupid as the idea I came to him with again, then what just happened would feel like a gentle touch. Then he and the woman, I never got her name, put me and my new things in the car and took me to Aunt Hildy and Grandpa Joshua. He got my school changed, gave them money every week to help me, and came to see me as often as he could. Even after he joined the military, he sent half his pay home every month. I heard he went to talk to my mother. I don't know what he said to her, but she didn't argue about me not coming home. And the man who kept bothering me? He broke all the fingers on one hand. Aunt Hildy and Grandpa raised me, and when I graduated, Hardy paid for my schooling. I decided I would become a paralegal and work for him so I could stay close. I love that man with all my heart, but he only sees me as a silly 13-year-old. There, now you know. One more thing. I hated you for taking him away, and I hated you even more for breaking his heart. But I've watched you. You've changed and grown up, I guess. He's never stopped loving you, and I know you and he are spending time together. Just remember, if you break his heart again, he isn't the only one who knows where quiet places are. Thanks for lunch. She left without looking back. 4 days later, they were sitting by the pool. It was the only thing she had changed about the house. She put it in when she thought she would live there alone and put up a tall fence for privacy, hoping to sunbathe without clothes. Of course, after she became a parent, she had to limit her sunbathing to times when Melissa was in school. Melissa and her friends loved the pool, and a few times each week and almost every weekend, it was filled with laughing teenagers. She only allowed boys on weekends and only when she could stay with them. There was always a crowd. Melissa and most of her friends were pretty, so she understood why the boys were there. However, when one of her friends told her that the boys also came to see her, she stopped wearing her usual bikini and got a few more modest one-piece swimsuits. The boys still looked at her, and sometimes it felt nice to see how they reacted. Hardy spent a lot of time in the pool, and the gentle exercise helped him a lot. He tended to stay away on weekends, even though Gwen and Melissa asked him to join them. His body was already marked from injuries, and he joked with Greg that if schools wanted to scare kids, they should show a picture of him from the neck down. He let her put lotion on his back, and she took her time, enjoying the moment. Finally, he had enough, turning to lean back in the lounge chair. She lay there with her eyes closed, hoping he was looking at her behind dark glasses. When they were alone, which happened less often these days, she wore her smallest swimsuits. At first, she knew it made him uncomfortable, and she teased him, asking why he seemed shy. "You've seen my body 1,000,000 times. Why should it bother you now?" He had on his sunglasses so she couldn't see his eyes, but his voice held sadness. "Because it's not mine anymore." He stood up and walked into the house. She lay there, shocked. She tried to back off for a while, not teasing him and wearing more modest suits. A week or two later, she came out in one of her one-piece suits and noticed he looked disappointed. She lay there for a few minutes, then got up, complaining. "This suit has something itching my back. Would you mind if I changed into something else?" "It's your house. You don't need my permission to wear whatever you like." She smiled when she returned in one of her nicer bikinis and saw his reaction. "He still wants me," she thought as she rubbed lotion on his back, glad he couldn't see her face. His recovery was going well, and she worried he would move back to his own house soon. She, Melissa, and Greg planned to make his life so enjoyable that he wouldn't want to leave. She felt a bit jealous of how Melissa connected with him. "Don't worry, Mom. I never really had a father, so I'm going to enjoy this moment for as long as I can." Melissa convinced him to be a guest speaker at Pleasant Hill during Career Week. "Are you okay with this, Mom? You're there all the time. It'll be nice to have him there. I had a boy who liked me a lot, but then he just stopped talking to me. I asked Cindy, my best friend, if she knew why. She said he got scared when he found out my dad was Hardy Wilkes." "I'm sorry to hear that, honey. Did you really like him?" "Kind of. But if he can't handle my family, he's not worth my time, right?" Gwen agreed. She sometimes worried that her family background could cause trouble. But besides that one time, she didn't mention it again. Hardy enjoyed being introduced as her father. She insisted he stay for lunch, and soon they were surrounded by many kids. Melissa was now very popular because she remembered where she came from and treated everyone kindly, knowing that life could be unpredictable. A few kids had to leave school because their parents lost jobs. She mentioned to Aunt Daisy that a girl she liked was moving away. Daisy looked into the family and the girls' grades. Suddenly, a scholarship showed up for her and a few others. Melissa knew Daisy was behind it, but she kept quiet. The next time she was alone in the car with Hardy, she decided to ask him something that was on her mind. "What's your connection to Bonnie? Why don't you ask her? Why won't you tell me?" "Because I don't talk about you with anyone else, and I won't talk about other important women in my life. If Bonnie wants to tell you, she will. Otherwise, it's not up for discussion." She still had the card Bonnie gave her at the fundraiser and called her. At first, Bonnie didn't remember her, but when she mentioned Hardy, it all came back. "I remember you. Have you danced the tango lately?" Gwen was glad Bonnie couldn't see her blush. "No, not since that night. There's only one person I'll ever dance with, and he's not interested anymore." "Don't be so hard on yourself. You didn't see how upset he was when she danced with other people, especially your date. What can I do for you?" Gwen asked Bonnie to join her for lunch and said Hardy thought it would be good to talk. "Okay, I have to be home next week for work. Let's meet for Sunday dinner with my family and then we can chat." "Thank you. Where do your parents live?" She could hear the playfulness in Bonnie's tone. "Oh, you'll find out. Everyone knows where the sheriff lives." "Will Rob is your dad?" "Yes, I thought you knew. Be there at 12:30. My mom hates waiting for dinner." The meal was good and the company was even better. More surprises were waiting. JT was there, Bonnie's grandfather. After lunch, they moved to the Florida room, now known as a sunroom. After some light chatter, Gwen asked Bonnie how long she had known Hardy. "Since I was 3. His mom watched me while my parents were at work. I grew up with him and Peggy. Did you ever, have feelings for him?" "When I was about 12, I had a huge crush on him. He was tall, blonde, and handsome. He treated me like a princess, but I was too young to realize he was just being nice. When he started dating at 16, I cried myself to sleep more than once. I followed him everywhere like a little puppy. One day in July when the blackberries were ripe, Peggy and I were picking some for a pie while Hardy dug holes for a new fence. We didn't see the snake until it bit my hand. A copperhead, one of the biggest I ever saw. Do you know what that is? Anyway, I screamed and pulled my hand away, but the snake was stuck to me. I panicked, and Hardy was trying to get it off. He finally got it free and told Peggy to get me to the Gator, a little utility vehicle. Hardy was only 15, so he didn't have a license. He helped me into the truck bed, but while he was helping, he accidentally loosened his grip on the snake, and it bit him. He started to panic and needed both hands to help me, so he put the snake in his mouth, holding it behind its head. He still had it in his mouth when we zoomed down the main street of town, with a deputy sheriff and a city cop chasing us with their sirens. He drove that little Gator right into the emergency room, spit the snake out, grabbed me and yelled I had been bitten. Peggy was screaming he had been bitten too, and as soon as he handed me to a nurse, he collapsed. The local newspaper had a police radio, and when they heard about a kid driving wild with cops chasing him, 2 photographers raced out and took pictures. It was on the front page the next day with the headline, "Snake bites man, man lives, man bites snake, snake dies." He literally bit the snake to death. If you go into my dad's office, you'll see a framed copy of that front page, plus the tanned skin of the snake. Hardy was the deputy chasing us, and that was right before he became sheriff. So now you see why my dad and granddad take such care of Hardy. He saved my life. When he got into trouble, they called in every favor they had to keep him out of jail. I know you've seen his tattoo. He got it to remember that day and to help him stay calm in tough times. There was a long silence before Gwen spoke again. "He went into the Marines, and I didn't see him again until last year. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. You're going to want this, and it's going to cost you." She leaned down, bringing her body close to his lips. "Can you smell that? It's your favorite scent. I remember how much you liked tasting it on me. Go ahead, have a taste." He quickly pulled back his tongue, realizing what he was doing. She kept moving closer, barely making a sound. After a moment, she sat up, wishing things could be different. She got off the bed and loosened one of his hands. "Now you can finish the rest. I tried my best, but it's done now. If you want to stay in pain and regret, that's your choice. Goodbye, Hardy. I won't be here when you wake up tomorrow." Tears filled her eyes as she headed for the door, but then she heard it. It was like a quiet breath. "Please." "What?" she asked. "Please, come back. Be with me, please." She rushed back to the bed and kissed him deeply. Just as they were about to get lost in each other again, she pulled away. "No." "What?" he exclaimed. "No! I told you before there's a cost for this. I want to hear it now, or I'm leaving." There was silence for a moment. Then he whispered, "I love you. I'll always love you." "That's not enough. Keep saying it until I believe you. Say all is forgiven." It was hard to say with everything else going on, but he managed to say it a few times over the next hour. He hadn't had time to fully untie himself, But then she moved against him so forcefully it felt like they might hurt each other. They both gasped. She was trying to take everything from him, and he was giving it right back. "That's it, baby, harder. We'll be gentle later. Right now, I need you to give it your all." She was almost shouting when they both reached their peak. It felt like everything around them stopped. She fell onto his chest, tears flowing. After a moment, she looked him in the eyes and demanded, "Say it! Say you love me and mean it!" He finally managed to set his other hand free, holding her face while she held his. "Gwen Wilkes, I love you. I'll shout it from the church on Sunday, put it in the newspaper, and I'll tell strangers on the street how I feel about you. How about I make an announcement on TV?" She laughed, feeling so joyful. "That won't be needed. Just tell me often, and let the family hear it sometimes, and we'll be good." They cuddled together, taking their time to enjoy full, gentle love, their tears mixing until they finally fell asleep. Later, Greg and Melissa returned home, laughing about the movie they had just seen. Gwen had forgotten to close the bedroom door, too tired to get up. They paused and stared. Gwen was asleep on Hardy's chest. Melissa tiptoed in and covered her with a blanket. "I don't think our daughter needs to see her parents like this. Don't you agree, Grandpa?" She smiled, her eyes slightly watery. He hugged her back, saying, "I believe the best sight for a young girl is to see how much her parents love each other. But some clothes might be a good idea." Hardy woke up suddenly, feeling happy but confused. Gwen shifted and wrapped her hand around him. "Good morning, my love. Did you sleep well? Honestly, this is the best night's sleep I've had in over 3 years." He brushed her hair back gently. "You wore me out, but I'm still not fully back to my old self." She moved slowly against him, enjoying every moment. "Don't worry, I have some new ideas for keeping you active, mostly at night to fit our schedules." He let his hand slip down to touch her. "I don't know, I've always liked morning workouts." He was reaching for more when the door burst open and Melissa jumped onto the bed. Gwen shrieked and quickly covered herself up. Melissa rolled her eyes. "Good morning, parents! Mrs. Hendricks says breakfast is getting cold and that one of you needs to take me to school. And Mom, if you cared about modesty, you should have closed the door last night. What a sight for someone like me." She was trying hard not to laugh as both parents turned red. "Now hurry up. Get ready for your showers separately. I don't want to explain why I'm late for school because I couldn't get my parents out of the bathroom." She dashed out before Gwen could say anything. Hardy couldn't help but start laughing, and soon Gwen joined him. She got a thoughtful look on her face. "Better get used to this." "Used to what?" he asked. "Our kids barging in at the wrong times." "How many kids are we talking about?" "Well, this house has 5 bedrooms, and I don't want to waste any space." 4? How long would that take? We're getting older, you know." She playfully hit him on the arm. "Speak for yourself. But I agree, we should start soon. I don't want you changing diapers when you're in your 50s. They exchanged looks full of magic and love, reaching for each other when Melissa burst back in. "Am I going to have to spray you two with water? Mom, just give me your keys. I'll see you both after school." "You are not driving my car. I'll take you with me. And on the way, we're going to have a long talk about how to respect your elders and the importance of privacy. I guess this isn't the best time to tell you that I called Aunt Daisy and said you two are back together. She wants to see you at her house as soon as you can." Gwen's eyes showed she was upset. She quickly left the room. "Melissa Sue Wilkes, you get back here right now!" They heard the front door slam shut, and Melissa shouted something about waiting in the car. Hardy just smiled at her. "Don't worry, she's just excited. You know how kids today are. Once something is on social media, everyone knows." "Social media? Oh no. Do you know how many family members she has as friends? All of them. Even the older ones who don't use computers will be getting calls if they haven't already." She saw a change in Hardy's expression. "Are you already having second thoughts?" "No, sweetheart. I just wanted a little more time for us to reconnect. We feel like we know each other, but 3 years is a long time. We've both changed, and I just wanted some quiet time. Don't worry, I'll just tell everyone you tied me up and made me do what you wanted. That will stop them from talking." Gwen almost fell over. "Please don't tell anyone about last night. I felt ashamed, but I was really worried. Still, it brought you back to me, so I don't regret it at all." "Don't worry, Gwen, I won't tell anyone. Think about how that would hurt my reputation. I have to tell you, my dear, that I now see that reputation is mostly an illusion. You're a good man pretending to be a tough guy. Besides, being with the most dangerous man in town makes me look good too. But I have to hurry, or Melissa will be late." She rushed out while Hardy enjoyed a big breakfast. Mrs. Hendricks was happy her cooking was appreciated. Greg came in, got a cup of coffee, and sat down across from Hardy, smiling. "Say it." "Say what, Hardy?" "That I told you so. That you were right." He laughed. "I don't need to say it, you just did. Welcome back to the family." "What do you mean?" "Welcome back to the family. It was close for a moment, but they liked Gwen a lot more than you, so if you hadn't changed, you were out. They almost made bets on how long you would last." "I'm glad we didn't. I would have lost. I thought you were more stubborn." "Well, I'm glad to give you all something to talk about. Oh, don't be upset. One of your cousins will mess up soon enough, and then we'll have other stories to share." "Actually, I have a feeling I know what it will be, but I'm not telling you. You'll find out soon." Gwen felt nervous as she went in. Marcus opened the door, gave her a big hug, and kissed her cheek. "Congratulations." She rolled her eyes. "Wow, does everyone know?" Aunt Daisy came up behind them and tapped her cane on the floor for attention. "Marcus, if you're done hugging your cousin, shut the door. Goodness, some people have no manners. Come on, girl, we have things to talk about." They went into a fancy room that was rarely used. This must be serious. Gwen sat down at a small table covered with books. "Come on, girl, we don't have all day." To her surprise, Aunt Daisy didn't mention Hardy at all. In fact, she didn't say anything about him for the next 90 minutes. "Gwen Marie, it's our turn to host the commemorative cotillion this year. I can't believe it's been 10 years already. You will be the official hostess, so you have a lot to do in the next few months." "Huh? What a way to communicate. Are you sure you're a lawyer? The commemorative cotillion of the Daughters of the Confederacy, girl? It's the biggest social event in Birmingham for the older members of our society. It's by invitation only, with full costumes. If a man has been in the military, he must wear a uniform, ideally one that matches his ancestors' rank. We only hold it every 2 years and combine it with the coming out for young women aged 16 and older. Melissa Sue will, of course, represent us. Any questions?" "Many. I thought you called me here to talk about Hardy and me, and I'm not even a member of the Daughters, right?" "Why would I want to talk about you and Hardy when so many other important things are happening? You got him back. Hooray for you. I always believed you would." "Can we keep our focus here? And yes, you'll be a member. You joined last year. You're welcome." For the next hour, Aunt Daisy filled Gwen with details about what being a hostess meant, what she needed to wear. Since she was the hostess, she would pay for most of it. Many members now had little money but a proud history. She would need to ask around and help as many as possible to attend. But don't worry. She would have help from Daisy, Hildy, and 2 women Gwen didn't even know. There would also be teams for decorating, catering, and entertainment. A historical expert, who turned out to be Marcus, would help with proper dress. Basically, her job was to settle arguments and write checks. "Do you think you can handle it, girl?" Gwen smiled wryly. "Do I have a choice?" "No." "Well, okay then. When do we start? What's the timeline?" 5 months. We have no time to waste. Lots to do, you know." Aunt Daisy was really excited, more than Gwen had ever seen her. "Look here, girl. This is what you're meant to look like." Aunt Daisy showed her a picture of a beautiful woman. She held a parasol, wore a shawl over her bare shoulders, and had a magnificent dress with lots of petticoats. There was another woman, younger and just as pretty, standing next to Aunt Daisy. "They're so pretty. Why do they look so familiar?" Gwen asked. Aunt Daisy laughed softly. "Because the older one is your grandmother, and the younger one is me. I told you, aside from the hair color, you look just like her. I'm sure you'll be even more beautiful. Hardy will be so proud." "That was us, but I won't tell you the year. Look at this." Aunt Daisy took away a cover from a painting on the wall. It was a portrait made from an old photograph. The women seemed to shine. Aunt Daisy sighed. "This is my favorite family portrait. I covered it the day Ginny died. I'm having one made of you and Melissa to hang next to it. When I'm gone, you'll have all of them. You'll be set, and Marcus, along with a few others in the family, will get my money, but you will inherit this house and everything in it. Marcus knows this, and he agrees. Even if you never live here, keep it in the family. 9 generations of us have lived here. I can't rest if it falls into the hands of strangers. Promise me, Gwen, please." Gwen took Aunt Daisy's hands. I promise you, my dear Aunt Daisy, that as long as I live, it will stay in the family as a loving reminder of a woman who means so much to me. For the first time, Aunt Daisy cried. It seemed to surprise her. Gwen held her until the tears stopped. Finally, Aunt Daisy pushed Gwen away. Look at me, such a soft-hearted old fool. You must think I'm losing my mind. Gwen wrapped her arms around her again. Please, Aunt Daisy, let me love you for a moment. Just this. Daisy let go, feeling warmth from Gwen's hug. It had been years since anyone held her like that. Finally, she pushed Gwen away gently. You should go home now, dear. You have a good man and a child waiting for you. You don't realize how lucky you are. We'll talk tomorrow. There's lots to do. Shoo. Aunt Daisy sat and looked at the portrait for a long time after Gwen left, thinking of happy days. When Gwen got home, she hugged Melissa, Hardy, and Greg tightly without saying a word. Soon she was busy planning the cotillion. Some of the older members were unsure about having a Yankee in charge, but when Aunt Daisy spoke about her family history going back 9 generations, they understood it didn't matter where she was from. It mattered that she was there. They agreed, especially when they realized that if they upset her, there wouldn't be an event. Hardy and the other men expected to be escorts got a surprise. They would have to learn traditional dances from the late 1700s and early 1800s. Tutors were arranged and practice sessions were set up. They practiced the Viennese waltz, the Virginia reel, and even the polka, which were popular dances of the time. This made things exciting for the younger crowd. They had to ask their dates early to make the practices. There was a rush of invitations, calls, and texts. Melissa had 19 invites. Gwen asked her why she hadn't accepted any. Most of these guys are just trying to impress me. They don't want to go with me. They want to go with the wealthy girl. I'm only 17, but Pleasant Hill is a place where parents push their kids to marry well regardless of love, Melissa said. Don't you like any boys from school? Some, but most are scared of who I am. Being the heir to both Howes and Canadays and with Hardy Wilkes as my dad figure. They're just shy. There's one boy I like, but he doesn't even know I'm alive. Gwen laughed. Honey, as pretty as you are, there's not a boy in Birmingham who doesn't know you. This is your chance. Ask him. What's the worst that can happen? That's not how it's done. Maybe not in 1850, but this is the New South. Women have more power now. Just ask him. He might say yes. Remember, Hardy didn't approach me first. I practically had to pull him to the altar. Speaking of marriage, Gwen and Hardy were taking their time. They often told each other they loved one another, but Hardy hadn't mentioned marriage, and Gwen didn't want to ruin things by bringing it up. Still, sometimes. Melissa finally found her courage and approached the boy she liked. Jimmy, I'm having a pool party at my house on Saturday. Would you like to come? James Brady Madsen was surprised. Melissa was the girl he had dreamed about since her first day at the academy. He watched her change from a shy girl into the confident young woman before him. He was so shocked he almost lost his words. What? Pool party this Saturday at my house. Be there at 3, okay? My mom and dad want to meet my new friends. Oh, no! He had heard enough stories about Hardy Wilkes to feel nervous. His dad was a lawyer, and he knew Gwen had a strong reputation. Yeah, sure, I guess. Awesome, we'll grill out later and roast marshmallows. See you then. And then, in a flash of shiny hair and subtle perfume, she was gone. His friend stood beside him with his mouth wide open. Good heavens, Melissa Wilkes invited you to her house. I believe in miracles now. I'm not going. Are you kidding? Is your brain working? Mine goes blank whenever she's near. The Queen of Pleasant Hill wants you at her house. Of course you're going. Your dad will be worried. I'm not good enough for her. Come on, no one is good enough for her. I'd do anything to get an invite like that. Say you're going or else... You're brave for someone much smaller than me. I'm serious, I'll knock you out and leave you on their lawn if you don't. Go? I'll think about it. When Jimmy said he might go to a pool party on Saturday, his parents seemed only a little curious. That sounds nice, his mom said. Do we know the family? You might. Melissa Sue Wilkes invited me. Dad, I think you know her mom, Gwen? His dad almost choked on his tea, and his mom nearly dropped a plate. Gwen Canada Wilkes, ex-wife of Hardy Wilkes, isn't she the wealthy lady who moved here a few years ago? That's her, Mom. Is it okay if I go? His mom was excited, imagining all the opportunities that could come from this. His dad laughed. "Go ahead, son. Have fun. But if that girl is anything like her mom, you'll end up saying yes, dear, most of the time." Jimmy was good-looking, even if he didn't see it. He was tall with black hair that made his blue eyes pop. He ran cross-country and played basketball, so he was fit. Many girls at school thought he might be gay because he hardly dated. He just didn't know how to act around girls. At 2:45 on Saturday, he was ringing the doorbell at the Wilkes' house. Gwen answered the door. Hi, Mrs. Wilkes. I'm Jimmy Madsen." But before he could say more, Gwen shook his hand. "It's nice to meet you, Jimmy. Melissa speaks highly of you. I know your dad. Tell him I said hello. Please come in." She called out, and a tall man appeared. "Jimmy, this is my husband, Mr. Wilkes." He shook Jimmy's hand firmly. "Welcome, Jimmy. Any friend of our little girl is welcome. Melissa is by the pool. Why not join her? We'll be around later." Gwen felt a rush of happiness when Hardy mentioned our little girl. She was so pleased. She soon had to focus on the party, though. 30 teens needed a lot of attention. Most of them knew the rules. If they were just girls, they could wear what they liked. Some suits were very small, which seemed silly. But if boys were present, the suits had to be more modest. Gwen had asked a girl or two to go home and change before. Thankfully, the girls were wearing nice, modest bikinis. Groups of kids gathered and moved around. Melissa held Jimmy's hand tightly and led him. He was stiff for the first half hour, but then he started to relax. Some kids stared at them with envy, and others with jealousy. 5 boys had asked Melissa to the dance, but she had said no to all. Gwen watched everything closely. She knew that there would be some innocent touches and kisses as kids paired up, and that was fine. But anything more wasn't okay. She caught a couple in the pool house. He had already taken her top off. They were both sent home. After that, things went smoothly. Gwen knew many kids were active, and she often worried about Melissa. She had talked to Melissa about sex soon after they moved in. Melissa had never had that talk before, and she cried during it. Gwen promised her that if she ever had questions or feelings, she could come to her. They agreed Melissa was too young. Because of her past, Melissa was behind her age emotionally, and Gwen wanted her to grow up a bit before even thinking about it. Gwen remembered her own past and knew if Melissa really wanted to have sex, there was little way to stop her. So far, Gwen believed Melissa was still innocent, but she would have to trust her. The party was a big success. The boys became quieter when Hardy came out to start the grill, but he was friendly, so they relaxed. Now, Melissa and Jimmy were a couple. One look at Jimmy showed he was infatuated, and Melissa was glowing. Gwen held Hardy's hand as they watched. Tears filled her eyes. "She's growing up, honey. Soon she'll go off to college and beyond. I wish I had gotten her earlier." She pulled her hand away and went inside suddenly, leaving Hardy confused. Lately, she had been moody. Did she have regrets? It would break his heart if she decided she didn't want him after all of this. She came back after a few minutes, her eyes dry, and took his hand again. "Sorry, honey, just feeling a bit emotional. Don't they make a nice couple?" He smiled back. "Yes, they do. He doesn't stand a chance. When a Wilkes woman wants something, nothing can stop her. Trust me, I know." She wanted to kiss him right there by the pool. Instead, she squeezed his hand, giving him a kiss filled with promise. "Hey, behave. Is this the example you want to set? Look here." Melissa gave Jimmy a quick kiss, and Hardy thought Jimmy might faint. "Get used to it, son. You're with a Wilkes now. No man has found out how to handle them yet. I'm proof of that. I've been trying for years." Melissa and Gwen were proud. Jimmy was just gleaming. "Dad, watch the grill. Something might be burning." He gave both girls a quick kiss. "You're right. Something is heating up." He turned back to the grill while the kids who saw it started laughing. Gwen took Melissa and rushed into the kitchen. Once they calmed down, they came back carrying platters. The tables were ready, and soon the hungry teens were eating burgers and hot dogs as fast as Hardy could cook them on the grill. The girls helped gather the plates while the boys cleaned up the mess. As it got dark and cooler, everyone changed into jeans and t-shirts while Gwen and Hardy started the fires. They had bought 4 portable fire pits and set them up around the yard. Soon, the sweet smell of cherry wood filled the air. Marshmallows, chocolate, graham crackers, and other snacks appeared. Melissa made sure to move around and talk to everyone, always with Jimmy by her side. Hardy and Gwen sat in the shadows and watched. A couple of kids slipped away into the night for a quick kiss, but came back before anyone noticed. Melissa and Jimmy walked by, and Melissa gave them a quick wave. "Did they even stop long enough to eat?" asked Gwen with a laugh. "Just barely. They seem hungry for something else," Gwen said, smiling. She watched closely as Melissa pulled Jimmy behind a big oak tree at the yard's edge. A couple of minutes later, when they came back to the fire, Jimmy had a goofy smile on his face. Melissa left him just long enough to come over, kiss Gwen, and thank her for her advice. It looked like she had found a date for the dance. By 10 o'clock, everyone had left except for Jimmy. He was allowed to stay until 11 to help clean up. He offered to pitch in, but they told him to go inside and relax. "What do you think they're up to now?" Hardy said as he took the last trash bag to the bin. "If I had to guess, I say they're probably just making sure they both still have their tonsils," Gwen said, laughing. "Come here. I want to show you something behind this oak tree," she added. Greg was still around and showed no rush to go back to Boston. After Hardy got shot, he took a break from work and came down right away. He had been missing a lot lately, and when Gwen asked about it, he said he was just taking long drives to enjoy the countryside. But lately those drives turned into overnight trips. After finding out Hardy would be okay, he decided to visit Roy. "Do you know who I am?" Roy nodded. "Can I help you with something?" "I hope so. I need to find Ronnie Wilkes." Roy's expression hardened. "This is family business. We'll take care of it," he replied. Greg lost his temper. "That was my daughter he almost killed. Hardy is like a son to me, and now he's in the hospital hurt badly. They're my family too, so it's my business. Will you help me, or do I need to get someone outside the family?" Roy and Harry, who was there too, felt the power coming from Greg. He was clearly angry. "No offense, but we usually handle things ourselves," Roy said. "I plan to let you. You want anything, and I mean anything, just tell me. Money, no limit. The best legal help if needed. Just one thing. I want to be there when you get him, okay? Give me your word as a Wilkes." Feeling uneasy, Roy shook his hand. Greg handed him a gym bag, and when Roy opened it, it was filled with cash. He looked up in surprise. $200,000. If it runs out, I'll give you more. Spread it around. If there's any left after we find him, keep it. Now get moving." He left the room without looking back. Roy and Harry exchanged glances, and Harry shivered. "Glad he's not angry with me." Roy put a big reward out for information, enough to catch a lot of attention. Will Robb heard about it and hoped to be the first to find Ronnie, knowing there would be trouble if he didn't. Roy beat him to it. One of the younger cousins found the stolen car behind an old abandoned house. Greg, Roy, and 6 tough men from his crew waited until midnight to sneak through the bushes. Greg moved quietly. "He's done this before," Roy thought as he watched him. Ronnie never stood a chance. He was sleeping on an old sofa when they rushed in. He didn't even get to fire a shot. Roy was already starting to hit him before they pulled him back. Greg spoke up. "I want you to tie him up and then leave. I'll handle it." Roy was about to argue about family honor, but stopped when Greg pulled out a knife and pressed it to his throat. "Listen, Roy. I said I'll take care of him. I paid for him, so just leave me 2 guys and go home. We're all in the same family now. Please, Roy." He left 2 of his strongest cousins. The look in Greg's eyes made the hairs on the back of Roy's neck stand up. "Wait outside," Greg told the 2 men. "I'll be a little while." Ronnie woke up to see a man he didn't know watching him. The older guy looked like he worked at an office. He felt a sense of relief. He wasn't going to die. There was a small fire and an old wood stove keeping the place warm. The man smiled. "Good, you're awake. I'm Greg Cannaday, the father of the woman you betrayed to the Escobars, and the father-in-law of Hardy Wilkes, the man you tried to kill. You almost got him, but he's too tough. I thought about waiting for him to deal with you, but I don't have that much patience." Ronnie started to panic. The man turned back to the fire and stirred it. When the flames jumped, he stopped. "Let me tell you something about myself, Mr. Wilkes. I was born rich and got even richer. My dad worried I would become weak, so he sent me to a special school for my education. When you grow up as a wealthy kid from the north in a military school down south, you quickly learn how to take care of yourself. You also get an idea of how people in the south see things. I loved that school, and I support it a lot now that I graduated. My family has a long history, Mr. Wilkes. We have served our country in every war since the Revolutionary War. After I finished school, I went straight into the army during the last year in Southeast Asia. He stopped for a moment, lost in thought. I did awful things there, Mr. Wilkes. I led a team at night. Did you know what that was? No? Good. Not many did. I promised myself that if I made it back home, I would never harm anyone again, but now I feel like I must break that promise. You're going to die tonight, Ronnie. It won't be quick, and it won't be easy. You can scream if you want, but if it bothers me, I might cut out your tongue. Are you ready? Before Ronnie could respond or plead, Greg took the knife he had been heating in the fire and pressed it against Ronnie's cheek. The skin burned instantly, and a horrible smell filled the air. Ronnie's scream startled one of the cousins, making him jump off the porch. He was about to rush in when the other cousin stopped him. Better leave it alone. After 30 minutes filled with screams, silence finally fell. Greg came to the door holding his blood-soaked clothes. Clean this up, okay? And don't tell anyone. If I find out you did, I won't be happy, he said as he vanished into the darkness. The youngest cousin hurried inside, came back out, and threw up in the bushes. The older one walked in slowly, shocked. What was left of Ronnie was slumped on the floor. A knife was stuck in the wall above his head, and something was hanging from it. The cousin looked closer. It was a tongue. They never talked about what they had seen, only telling Roy that Ronnie was taken care of. At family gatherings after that, they avoided Greg like the plague. Gwen was busy getting ready for the cotillion. Greg kept coming in and out with a strange smile, while Melissa was falling in love for the first time, leaving Greg feeling a bit lost. Jimmy had become a regular visitor at the house, and they all managed to sneak in some extra dance practice with Gwen and Melissa. Jimmy didn't want to embarrass her, and Hardy simply enjoyed dancing. Plus, it was good exercise. His body was nearly healed now. He started spending time at the farm, taking care of things that were ignored while Joshua was sick. There were always a couple of younger cousins around to keep him company while Hildy was away. She seemed to be gone a lot lately, which made Hardy curious, but he decided it was not his concern. Besides, she looked happier than he had ever seen her. Hardy found a couple of younger female cousins and secretly paid them to help Hildy with her work and to assist with preparing Sunday dinners. Their family gatherings kept getting larger, often reaching around 50 people, so they moved the gatherings outdoors. Hardy had a shelter built that could hold about 100 people, complete with a kitchen. Much of his time was spent watching over the few cows he had bought. Calling it a herd was a bit much, as it was just 5 cows and 1 bull, but he had big ideas. These were Scottish Highland cows, small and fluffy, and Hardy admired how they looked. Greg had seen them while driving in Tennessee and couldn't stop talking about them. Hardy looked them up online and convinced the whole family to check them out. Gwen thought they were cute, but was still too much of a city girl to get close. However, Melissa and Jimmy were soon out in the pasture, petting them after getting the owner's permission. He didn't have any cows for sale, but gave Hardy a few names. 3 weeks later, he brought home 2 cows from Tennessee, another 2 from Arkansas, and a bull from Georgia. He was as excited as a kid at Christmas when they arrived. One wonderful surprise was how Joshua reacted to them. This was the first thing that interested him since his surgery. Soon, he spent every day with them, treating them like pets. When they heard him call, they would rush to the fence, eager for his attention. When the first calf was born, Joshua was so happy that he nearly handed out cigars. Greg gifted Joshua a computer, and at 82 he learned how to use it. He kept in touch with other cattle owners, looking for more cows to add to his small herd. Soon visitors were coming by, usually for Sunday dinner, and they would talk about cows until everyone knew way too much about them. Greg shocked the family when he bought another farm a couple of properties away, claiming it was just a good investment. Hildy was there all the time, overseeing the renovations of the house. Then Greg bought 10 more Highland cows, getting Joshua to agree to take care of them. The cotillion was approaching fast. Gwen felt overwhelmed at times, even with all the help she was getting. It was set to be held at a large old plantation just outside of town. The plantation itself was gone, and the house was now used for weddings, corporate gatherings, and private parties. The main attraction was the big ballroom, which could hold 300 people. So far, she had 240 people confirmed. About half of them needed financial help, and Daisy quietly provided the necessary funds, mostly as a kindness to old friends. Though she would never say it aloud, Daisy believed this might be her last cotillion, and she wanted it to be special. Tailors had been working hard to make sure the suits and dresses were ready. There was a strict dress code for the women. The young women could wear white, ivory, yellow, pale pink, or light blue. The older women could wear darker colors like red, blue, green, or even gold. The older ladies, especially the widows, were encouraged to wear black. 2 weeks before the big day, Gwen went for her final fitting. Gwen was shocked when the dressmaker said she needed to make her dress a bit bigger. Gwen knew she hadn't been eating well and hadn't been exercising, but she thought she had lost weight instead of gaining. She told herself she would take better care of her health after all of this. The next morning, she woke up feeling sick and barely made it to the bathroom. She had to be at the plantation for the final preparation, so she took an antacid and went to pick up Aunt Daisy. She still felt a bit queasy but got through the meetings. On the way back, though, she had to pull over. Daisy insisted that she see a doctor, saying she couldn't be getting sick with such an important event so close. Daisy made a call on her cell phone, which was her only connection to modern life, and a doctor was ready when they got to her house. Who visits people at home anymore? Gwen thought as the doctor took her temperature and checked her blood pressure. He asked her some questions and started to smile. Please visit my office tomorrow, Mrs. Wilkes. I need to do some tests to confirm what I think, he said. Daisy was worried. Condition? Just tell me straight. What do you think is wrong with her? She asked. I don't think anything is wrong that a little time won't help. How much time? We have a big event coming up in just a few days. Will she be okay by then? Oh, I'm sure she will be fine for your event. But the time frame I'm thinking is about 7 to 8 months. He looked into Gwen's nervous eyes and said, My dear, I believe you are going to become a mother. When was your last period? It should have been almost 2 weeks ago, but I've been irregular before, especially when I'm stressed. The meaning suddenly hit her hard. Oh my God, I'm having a baby! She fell onto the sofa, crying a lot. Daisy hugged her tightly and cried too. Hardy will be so proud. I wish I could see his face when you tell him. Hardy, what am I going to do about him? I love him and he loves me, but he hasn't mentioned marriage, and I've been too scared to ask. Tell him it's time to be serious and step up. I'm sure he'll take responsibility. No, I want him to marry me because he wants to, not because he feels he has to. What a mess! She lowered her head to cry again. Daisy cleared her throat, sounding like she had something unpleasant to say. Well, you could always deal with it quietly. He wouldn't have to know. Deal with it? You mean an abortion? No! Even if he doesn't want it, even if he leaves me, this baby will be born. Daisy patted her hand. Good girl. Now pull yourself together and think of how to tell him. That night, Hardy noticed Gwen was quieter than usual, but he let her be, thinking she was just focused on the upcoming event. He told her that his costume was ready, and she said hers was too. They agreed to see each other in costume for the first time at the event, hoping it would be a nice surprise. Still, he caught her watching him from time to time. Hardy had been thinking a lot about marriage recently. He wanted to ask Gwen in a special place at the perfect time. He decided to propose at the cotillion. It would be a magical night. He had some surprises of his own planned for that evening. Finally, the big night arrived. Gwen had also done a lot of thinking. She decided to gather her courage and tell him afterward that she was pregnant. This way, if he reacted poorly, she would still have good memories of the cotillion. Gwen, Daisy, Hildy, and Melissa got ready at Daisy's house, wanting to surprise the men. Hardy, Greg, and Jimmy, dressed at their place, called for a limo and soon arrived at Daisy's door. Daisy opened the door and the men were led into the parlor with the door open so they could see the stairs. Daisy called out, "Gentlemen, Miss Melissa Sue Wilkes!" Melissa floated down the stairs like a dream in her soft yellow dress, bare shoulders, and a beautiful necklace. Her hair fell in lovely curls around her face, with matching ribbons. Jimmy almost fainted. He wore the fancy suit of the time. "Miss Hildy?" Baker?" Hildy looked stunning in a red satin gown, white lace gloves, and fancy shoes. She also seemed to glide as she walked, with pearls around her neck. Greg smiled widely as he walked with her. He wore a Union captain's uniform. After some discussion, Greg was allowed to wear it as a sign of making peace after past issues. Daisy waited a few moments before announcing Gwen. "Mrs. Gwen Marie Wilkes!" Gwen stepped down in her shining gold gown with lace and silk and matching gloves. A diamond sparkled at her throat thanks to Daisy. A lace shawl framed her shoulders. Her hair was styled nicely, partially tied back. Hardy couldn't remember breathing. He was dressed as a major from the 1st Alabama, looking authentic, with a sash and sword. Gwen had convinced him to grow his beard back for the occasion. Each man gave his partner a single red rose and kissed their cheeks, careful not to mess up their makeup. They each also gave Daisy a rose, yellow, white, and red, and kissed her cheek too. Her eyes showed more emotion than Gwen had ever seen. Daisy wouldn't travel with them. She had her own companion for the night. She kept teasing Gwen by not telling him about her surprise. When the limo arrived at the big house, it stopped in a special spot where 4 fancy carriages were ready. The carriages were shiny, and the horses looked beautiful. "What's happening?" Melissa shouted happily. "This is my gift to the celebration. Jimmy Gregg will when he gets here, and I will take each guest to the front steps of the mansion and inside. You ladies and Aunt Daisy will greet them. Go on now. We will meet you when the last guest comes," he said. He also hired 2 groups of photographers and videographers to capture the day. As hostesses, they arrived an hour early. Soon, carriages were coming through the gates. Everyone wanted to arrive in style, so no one drove their cars. Gwen, Melissa, Hildy, and Daisy welcomed all the guests, encouraging them to try the tasty snacks served by waiters dressed in clothes from the mid-1800s. The orchestra was tuning up, and the fun would start soon. The guests chatted and looked around. There was a room for the ladies to enjoy more serious drinks than what was served in the ballroom. The gentlemen had a drawing room. For some unknown reason, Gwen wasn't drinking, and Hardy thought it might be better to skip the drinks, too. They walked around for about 45 minutes, keeping an eye on the kids. Suddenly, there were 2 loud knocks at the top of the stairs. It was Marcus, looking sharp in period clothing and holding a big cane. He wore a small headset that was hard to see. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out, his voice booming thanks to a small speaker system. "Following the long-standing traditions of your ancestors, it's time for the introductions. Dancing will start soon. Please take your places. We will start in 5 minutes." The introductions were for the younger women to meet important people in the community. After that, each couple would use a back stair to be introduced, and then walk down the main stairs into the ballroom, greeted with applause. The hostess and her family would always go last. It was believed that the order of introductions showed how important someone was, with the most important person going last. First, the girls were introduced. Marcus would tap his cane twice to get attention and announce them. Melissa was the very last. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Miss Melissa Sue Wilkes, escorted by Master James Madsen," he said. Melissa would always remember that night. She told her kids later that she felt just like Cinderella. The adult introductions began, with couples walking down the stairs to polite applause. They were getting closer to the time for dancing. Hildy and Greg were next to be introduced, followed by Daisy and her partner, and then Gwen with Hardy. Hardy thought Gwen was acting a little odd, and she thought he looked as nervous as a cat in a room full of dogs. The curtain opened, and Hildy and Greg came out. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. and Mrs. Greg Cannaday!" Gwen gasped. "What?" Greg turned with a grin as the curtain closed. "We got married last weekend." Daisy stood with a proud smile. Hildy had told her earlier in the week and made her promise not to spoil the surprise. Gwen was surprised again when Aunt Daisy stepped up to the curtain with her partner. "Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Daisy Howe, escorted by Mr. Joshua Hardy." Daisy wore a lovely black dress with red accents. Josh was in a sergeant's uniform, honoring an ancestor who earned a Medal of Honor. Everyone knew that Daisy might never attend another cotillion, and their applause showed how much they cared for her. They stepped forward. Hardy arranged for Marcus to hold the curtain for a moment. He took her hand tightly for a second, then knelt down. "Gwen, I've been thinking about how to tell you how much I love you, but I can't find the right words. Just know I never want to spend another night without you. My love, my woman, my wife. Will you marry me again?" Gwen looked into his eyes, suddenly blurted out, "I'm pregnant," and fainted right then and there. Marcus thought he heard the cue, tapped twice, and announced them. "Ladies and gentlemen, your hosts, Mr. and Mrs. Hardy Wilkes." The curtain opened to show Hardy on one knee, holding an unconscious Gwen. Everyone gasped, and Marcus quickly closed the curtain again. There were 2 doctors in the crowd, and they hurried to the stairs. Gwen began to wake up in Hardy's arms while he was still kneeling. All the moments came rushing back to her, and she kissed him again and again, telling him how much she loved him. When the doctors came, they smiled and said she was okay to go back to the party. When the curtains opened again, the applause lasted for 3 minutes. Melissa and Hildy rushed to meet them at the bottom of the stairs. Melissa gave a little cheer, "Way to go, Mom," and then she patted her stomach. "And you too, little brother or sister." Daisy, Gwen, Hildy, and Melissa hugged tightly, all of them crying. Even Daisy shed a tear. They all had to head to the restroom to fix their makeup. The cotillion turned into a special celebration for the Wilkes and Canaday families. After getting the doctor's blessing, they danced the night away. All parties must end, and at midnight, the ball officially closed. There was a rush to the bedrooms as the younger people changed into party clothes. For Melissa's 18th birthday, Hardy and Gwen rented a small hall at the club, a well-known place nearby. They turned it into a dance club with bright lights and a DJ. Hardy and Gwen were the main hosts, along with 4 other couples. They had rooms rented for the night, including a special suite for themselves. Greg and Hildy decided to go home to their renovated farmhouse. Joshua took Daisy home and spent the night with her. This was the first time in over 30 years that either had shared a bed with someone. The party was a blast, and the dance floor was filled until 2:30 in the morning. Most of the kids had rooms booked with their families, but a few, like Melissa, chose to go home. Gwen was worried. "No one will be there. I don't want you to be alone," she said. Melissa looked down, blushing. Mom, I won't be alone." Gwen suddenly realized that her daughter was no longer a little girl. "Be careful, honey. Promise me." "We will, Mom. I love you. And please don't tell Dad, okay?" Gwen stood at the entrance, watching as Jimmy arrived and opened the door for Melissa, then turned to head back to the suite. As she walked, she absent-mindedly rubbed her belly, thinking about how many more times she would have to deal with watching her kids grow up and leave her. And now we return to the beginning of our story. The little girl finally got her hair braided and ran into the arms of the man who just walked in. "Grandpa? Was Grandma a Yankee?" she asked. He looked at her, the light of his life for 40 years, still seeing his wife as beautiful. "Well, she was, honey, but she got over it." Epilogue: Joshua passed away 18 months later, but not before holding his great-grandsons, Joshua Hardy Wilkes and Gregory Canaday Wilkes. He said it was the proudest moment of his life. Yes, Gwen had twin boys first, and then they welcomed Annette Daisy Wilkes, named after Daisy and Hildy, whose real name was Annette. She never explained how Hildy got her nickname. Daisy died shortly after Joshua, but before she went, she hung up a portrait of Gwen and Melissa next to one of her and her sister Ginny. Marcus found her in a chair, looking at the paintings. Sadly, she never attended another dance after that. Marcus became very rich and married a girl he met in college. She was white, and her last name was Chapman, which was funny because she was another cousin. They had 4 kids together. Gwen kept up her home and let the Daughters of the Confederacy use it for meetings. She would go there sometimes, feeling old or missing Daisy, and sit under the portraits, remembering the past. Greg and Hildy moved to Boston but returned after one winter. Greg started raising Highland cattle and became one of the top breeders in the country. Hildy discovered she loved horses, and her Arabians were some of the best. Greg passed away at 75, while Hildy lived for another 12 years. By then, most of the sparkle was gone from her eyes. Before she died, she said her greatest comfort was knowing Gwen would take care of the family. Gwen and Hardy lived in Birmingham for 8 years before retiring to the farm. They stayed because Gwen served 2 terms as district attorney and 1 as a circuit court judge. Guess Paul was right. JT passed away quietly. Will Robb joked that it was the first thing he ever did quietly. Will Robb finally retired after 2 more terms as sheriff, giving Gwen a framed news article and a tanned snakeskin. Allan Hovis spent 3 years in jail. He was found dead in a toilet. Vicente Escobar vanished during a gang war and was never seen again, though rumors said he moved to Italy. Ann Burnside retired with honors and married a woman named Victoria. They run a resort in the Bahamas and seem happy, although sometimes Anne sees a blonde couple at the resort and daydreams. Melissa Sue Wilkes went to Alabama and got her law degree from Harvard. Joshua joined the Army and made it his career. Greg studied law but decided to become a Baptist minister instead. Annette Daisy had a tough time in love. She married poorly twice before finding a good man, and they've been together for 10 years. Roy made a mistake and did 10 years in prison. Junebug graduated while he was away. Whenever his family needed help, a cousin was always there. Hardy and Gwen paid his living expenses until he got out. By then, he retired, received a check, and laughed at life. As for Hardy and Gwen, they love each other deeply and spend their days happily together. Gwen is the strong matriarch of the family, helping them whenever needed. Many went to college thanks to mysterious scholarships and grants. The Sunday dinners they host have become legendary. Hey, audience! If you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.